Having Venerable Robina here with us today is the result of the gathered efforts of Buddhist groups from Bucharest, Budapest, and Cluj. Venerable Robina responded to the invitation made by the group from Bucharest, and after teaching in Budapest and Bucharest, here we are today in Cluj at her first visit to Romania. Born in Melbourne in mid-40s, educated as a Catholic, as she says, in love with God. 19 years old, she became a hippie. In the mid-60s, she gave up God. Long later, radical activist, left, and feminist. Eventually, wanted something spiritual again, which led her to martial arts. Eventually met two Tibetan lamas, Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and 18 months later she was ordained. She became a Buddhist nun early 1978. Since then, working full-time for the two lamas organization, FPMT, which stands for Foundation for the Preservation of the Mahayana Tradition. Over the years, she has served as editorial director of Wisdom Publications, editor of Mandala Magazine, executive director of Liberation Prison Project, and now she's teaching Buddhist philosophy and psychology, traveling full-time around the world teaching Buddhism. Our group was founded in December 2016, and therefore is a very young group. Today, it is very grateful having Venerable Robina here, and this was possible with the unofficial support we have from the FPMT organization for which Venerable Robina works. Venerable Robina, thank you for being here.
It seems like you have to sit very still. These chairs make a big noise. Well, I have never been to Romania before. I've just come from Bucharest, but I like it very much. And I've been very sincere. I like Romanian people, so far. And I like cities, so I like your city as well. So I'm very happy to be here. I made them put my chair very high, not because I'm important, because I want to see everybody. So if I was down, I couldn't see you, so I like to see everybody's face. Okay. So people often ask me, why am I a Buddhist? You know, in this basically Christian Jewish world, why am I Buddhist? Well, I suppose since I was a very little girl, brought up in Australia, you know, educated first as a Catholic, and initially, I think, externally I was always very rebellious. I was always the naughty girl at school when I went to the Catholic convent. At home I was always naughty. But internally, I always used to think about things. What is the meaning of life? What is God? What is happiness? All these things. So I think all my life, without calling it that, I was kind of driven to try to understand the way the world is. I never asked the scientific questions, but it was always so very much first politically. And then, you know, as you heard, when I wanted something sort of spiritual again, and then I came across these Buddhists, and that's what I've been doing now since. So, I think in our culture we probably don't know that much about Buddhism or even the history, but actually where Buddha's sort of context, 2,500 years ago, you know, but before him, there were these extraordinary people in India. We know nothing about this. We know all about the Greeks, we all know about Europe, you know, but not really these Indians. But there was an extraordinary culture where they were these very sophisticated thinkers, with a great sense of morality and goodness, and they basically, you know, were trying to understand the nature of the self, the nature of who we are. This is obviously a question we ask all these centuries. So in the end, you have many philosophers, you have communist thinkers, Catholic thinkers, Muslim thinkers, scientific thinkers, you know. And I suppose we're all looking, were all asking the similar questions, but obviously there are many different ways of understanding, you know. So these Buddhists, you know, this Buddha, this person called Buddha, these Indians way back then, they were the ones who developed this an extraordinary, I would say, sophisticated skill. And it's known these days, the world now knows it roughly as meditation or mindfulness meditation. But what it is this very skillful psychological technique that enables you to go into your own mind, but in a very coherent, clear way. So basically these amazing Indians, and then Buddha coming out of that tradition, he diverged in his own direction 500 years later. So thus we now have Buddhism in the world. So in some countries you learn mostly about Buddhist meditation. In other countries, you know, you might do different things. Okay, but in the Tibetan Buddhist monastic university system, which is Buddhism has been in Tibet since about the 8th century. There's a tradition there where people go into the monasteries and you study for 20, 30, 40 years the entire kind of Buddhist world view. So that's always what's interested me, not just to meditate, not just to be a good person, not just to be moral, but I've sort of had this wish, as I said, to understand things. So then I would say, out of the essence of them, the essence of Buddhist philosophy, the essence of Buddhist psychology, and I'm serious when I say that the mind for Buddha, that is the Buddha's expertise, this enormous knowledge about the way our mind works. And I don't mean the brain, I mean the actual way we think and feel, and the Buddha's own experiential findings really are that we all have this extraordinary potential to know our own mind, our thoughts, feelings, emotions, unconscious, subconscious, the entire spectrum of our inner being. This Buddhist skill is to learn to know yourself intimately and deeply so that you can then change your mind. And so change it into what? Well, you know, the Buddhist view. The word Buddha, it's a Sanskrit word, and the Tibetan equivalent of that word, Sangye, it's very tasty meaning. The first syllable, Sang, implies that we can completely eradicate from our own mind, our own being, all anger, all ego, all fear, all jealousy, all depression, all low self-esteem, all these states of mind that we all are so familiar with in our daily lives. And if we look at the world, we can see that everybody is familiar with these things, because these states of mind are what cause us so much pain and then cause us to harm others. And then the second syllable of this word, Sangye, the Tibetan word for Buddha, the second syllable implies we can develop to perfection the clarity, the intelligence, the kindness, the love, compassion. So speaking really simply, what this person Buddha, the essence of all his philosophy, all his teachings, when we put it into practice, what we're attempting to do is remove from our mind all the rubbish and grow all the goodness. I mean, speaking very simply, speaking really in an essential way. So this is why this Buddhist technique of learning to focus the mind, to concentrate your mind, which is this particular meditation technique that, you know, that Buddhism uses, it's developed the skill to become deeply familiar with what's inside here. As one of my teachers said, we're learning to become our own therapist. So if one of you is a therapist, let's say one of you is a psychologist, and I come to you and I say, would you please give me methods to get rid of all ego, all jealousy, all anger, all fears, all anxiety, all the time, and develop infinite love, infinite compassion for everybody, all the time, I think you will think I am seriously mentally ill. Truly, because there's no concept like that, I think. Speaking in a very simple way, there is no concept like that, I think, in our materialist models of the mind, in our normal view of psychology. So that's the point about the Buddha. Because you see, Buddha is not, one of the crucial things is, Buddha is not a creator. Buddha does not, he suggests there is no creator. He has his own very, very different way of interpreting the world. But on the one hand, it's interesting because, you know, I'm a Buddhist nun. Well, that sounds like religion, doesn't it, you know? So, but on the other hand, Buddhists don't talk about a creator. So therefore also the point is Buddha was this regular guy who through his own hard work internally, you know, coming out of this extraordinary tradition of the people before him, learned to deeply understand his own mind and fundamentally change it. So this word Buddha, Sangye, indicates that. So that practically speaking, day to day, how do you apply these ideas? What would you do every day, quote, you know, being a Buddhist? Well, that's why the meditation technique comes in. One learns to focus your mind, then you can begin to listen to what is happening in here, and then because you know that anger causes you pain, and jealousy causes you pain, and you know that it harms you, and it causes you to harm others, then you have this wish to change it. Now those words are pretty easy. Those words are very easy, but why is it such a difficult job to do? Well, one of the reasons, and this is where the Buddhist view is different, you know, if I'm angry, if I'm upset, and I'm crying, and why are you angry, Robina? Or why are you suffering, Robina? I will point to my boyfriend, Christian, and I'll say, it's his fault, he hurt me, he cheated on me. So nobody in the world would argue with me. For us in the world, instinctively, and even according to our psychology and our science, that is the logical reason why Robina is unhappy. Someone else caused my suffering. So then if I'm really happy one day, why are you happy, Robina? Oh, because Christian is so kind to me. So basically, what we tend to think instinctively, and if we look at the world, we all act like this. We really believe in our bones that happiness comes from out there. The cause of my happiness is out there. People, things, everything out there, nice. And then my suffering comes from out there. Well, Buddha would agree, except he thinks we're missing one fundamental point. He agrees it's not cool if Christian cheats on me, you know. Good, I understand, he says. But he says, basically, if you can change Christian, ask him to stop cheating. Well, if he stops, I'm happy. But what if he doesn't? What if I change? But what if he doesn't? If your sister-in-law is mean to you, but doesn't change, then the hard work starts. So really, in one sense, all Buddhism is saying that we have the power to change the way we think. I mean, it doesn't sound very complicated, but the instinct in us thinks, well, why should I change? He is the problem. Of course I'm angry, but he caused it, we say. And we don't question that. So really looking at Buddhism most fundamentally, that's the point he disagrees with. He doesn't argue, like I said, that Christian might cheat on him. He doesn't argue that is indeed not moral. But he says we have the power, by knowing our own mind, literally to learn to fundamentally change my anger, my fears, and therefore learn to be happy. So, and the point is, because Buddha is not a creator, because he doesn't talk about there's no concept, therefore, in Buddhism of punishment and reward, our usual view of morality, you know. Therefore, it's our own responsibility, Buddha says. So, I worked for many years, started in America when I was based there. I was from Australia. I ran a non-profit working with people in prison. And this was a very powerful experience for me, because there are people who can't change the outside. I mean, at some point, if Christian keeps cheating on me, I have the common sense and the intelligence to decide I'm leaving him. That's very reasonable, very intelligent. But my friends in prison don't have that luxury. So this started about more than 20 years ago when I was editing a Buddhist magazine, and one young Mexican-American from Los Angeles who wrote, he was about 18 I think, he wrote a letter. He read a Buddhist book, so he got our address. And he told me that he'd been in prison since he was 12, he'd been in gangs since he was 11, and then he'd been in prison, he'd be in prison for the rest of his life. So he wanted to learn more about Buddhist ideas. So the whole project grew from there. So at some point we were receiving letters from something like 1,000 prisoners every month, And we provided books and advice and would visit them and write them letters. So what I found so moving about this, when you say he was in a prison, he didn't have the luxury to leave if it wasn't good. He had to be there. But because he knew he didn't have the luxury to change the prison, but he knew he liked the idea and he could change his own mind. I mean, this is not so complicated. We all know this. We do this every day. If I'm angry with my husband, I decide I won't say anything, I'll try and be kind. So that's changing your mind. We understand it, we all do it. It's not secret. But the trouble is, it seems to us to be very spontaneous and almost instinctive to assume that why should I change? My husband cheats on me. The boss is awful. My sister-in-law is unkind. So then they should change, we think. And then not only that we even often don't think we can change. We assume it's normal to be angry, and it is, but we can change it. So that seems so mysterious, because how can you change a feeling, you know? But this is the Buddhist understanding of the mind. When we can learn to focus the mind using this simple meditation technique, you know, you step out of your head, you learn to be able to hear more clearly the thoughts going on inside. Then you learn to be able to, you know, kind of change the way you think. Argue with your own thoughts, argue with your own feelings, and learn to, but it takes time and it takes courage, because we would rather he change. Why should I change? So I remember when I read about one woman in prison in Florida, you know, they execute people, they have death row there. So this one woman, I read about her, I didn't meet her. I don't think she was a Buddhist, but she was this very remarkable woman. She was in prison on death row for 17 years. And her husband was even executed. But they were innocent. They were accused of killing 2 police. But they were actually innocent. And she finally got out. But she's this extraordinary woman. She said, at some point, I realized I could not change anything. But they couldn't take my mind from me. So she said, I decided, I'm not a prisoner, I'm a monk. I'm not in a cell, I'm in a cave. So, I mean, it sounds very moving to hear this. She must be very courageous, I think extraordinarily brave, but also, I would say, extraordinarily intelligent. Because if we really believe, I'm suffering because of my husband, I'm suffering because of the bad job, I'm suffering because the weather is bad, I'm suffering because the food is bad, which is what we think instinctively, then life will be a nightmare. And that means, so then the Buddhist view of it, if we understand more deeply the Buddhist way of talking about the various states of mind we have, and that really is Buddhist expertise. I mean, I'm not saying you have to like Buddhist psychology, but that is really where Buddha goes more deeply and describes the way these various states of mind work. So essentially in the Buddhist view, they talk about how we've got these negative states of mind, like the ego voices. I like to call them the voices of ego. And the most fundamental one in daily life, according to the Buddhist view, is a very simple word called attachment. So we use the word, I think, in a very different way. But in Buddhist way, it's this really primordially deep kind of, first of all, it's a primordially deep feeling of always being dissatisfied, never having enough. I never have enough. I don't have enough. What I do, it's not enough. What I get, it's not enough. What I achieve, it's not enough. It's just something very primordially deep inside all of us. Then on the basis of this dissatisfaction, the next part of, the next facet of attachment is then we naturally kind of crave for something, of course, out there, that we feel that when we get that, then we will feel happier. Then it will give us happiness. So that could be finding the boyfriend, finding the job, finding the money, finding the physical things, the objects of the senses. And this we believe very strongly, very instinctively. Because we really do believe deep in our heart that the things, like I said, the things out there are what causes me happiness. And the things out. So we try to get together in our life the good things, the nice husband, the nice children, the nice house, the nice money, the nice job. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's not as if you shouldn't have those. But the way the Buddhist view is saying, we put all our power into those. And then, of course, when we don't get them, or we get something that isn't what we want, then that's what we call suffering. So it's in a sense, Buddha's saying, if we rely totally on the outside, believe totally that those things are the main source of my suffering and the main source of my happiness, we will always be disappointed. It's impossible. We can't do it. It's impossible. Whereas if we change our mind, get less angry, less attached, less negative, less fearful, less anxious, therefore more kind, more compassionate, more content. I mean, the words are so simple, and I think these are words we understand somehow. But the Buddhist emphasis is on this. A person attempting to do Buddhist practice is attempting to do this job every day, you know. So this attachment is the main problem. It's multifaceted. It's dissatisfaction, then it's kind of craving for something, and then when we get that thing, then the object, the person, the new thing, or whatever, looks way more delicious than it really is, and then we manipulate it to keep it, and then we possess it as our own. So it's kind of a really distressing kind of state of mind. And then this is deep inside us, and every second of the day, deep inside us, this assumption of attachment is that I must get what I want every second. And that's what we assume is happiness. But the second I don't get it, even just driving the car and suddenly the red light comes, a loud noise comes, a person says an unkind word, it completely distresses us. Then we immediately go from attachment to annoyance or anger or upset. These simple words with this opposite response from attachment. They say that anger is the response when attachment doesn't get what it wants. This is so instinctive in us, we just don't notice it. And then when we do notice it, we assume it's just the way to be. So to change this response takes time, you know. It's quite deep inside us. And that's why I really admire my friends in prison. They didn't have the choice. I have a friend on death row, another one. He's in Kentucky, and he's getting close to his death date. So he's been there more than 30 years. He was, you know, he had guns, he was dealing drugs, people died. But since being on death row, he's become a Buddhist. He's using these tools to help his own mind. And he knows he's going to die soon. And he said, I'm ready for that electric jolt, Robina, because he's confronted the reality of it. And he's this really good, you know, ordinary good man. Looks after the people on death row, takes care of his sister, his mummy, his this and his that, and he's got a happy mind, he's content. He's living in a garbage dump, you know. He's treated by the world like an animal because he killed people. But he's a good human being internally, and he's changed his mind. I mean, he's changed his mind, changed his emotions, changed all the neuroses, become content, This is a daily way of talking about the way Buddhism talks, you know, the most simple level. And of course, the most difficult level. The other aspect, the other suffering component of this attachment, which then gives rise to jealousy, which then gives rise to, you know, all the other dramas, like the you know, attachment gives rise to anger, which gives rise to jealousy, and the others, these things we think are completely normal. So, of course, the more attached I am to one person, or the more angry I am, then the more cut off from others. If I'm caught up in attachment and fears and anxiety and depression and low self-esteem, I can't see past my own nose. I can't see anybody else. Therefore, I don't care about anybody else. I don't try to help anybody else. And if anything, I'll probably harm other people. We can see this in the world. So there's this nice analogy in Buddhism that a bird needs two wings, wisdom and compassion. So really, the compassion wing is the point. But as the Dalai Lama says, compassion is not enough. We have to have the wisdom wing. And that's what I'm talking about so far, in a really basic way, you know, learning to understand our own mind, learning to recognize, recognize what's inside me, and instead of blaming the other person, think, what can I do to change this? What can I do to change my anger? What can I do to change my jealousy? That doesn't mean I have to stick with the lousy boss. It doesn't mean I have to stick with my crazy husband. No, the point is when we're so overwhelmed by attachment, I become a victim. And then you don't even, not only do you think you can't, not only do we not know we can't change our own mind, we don't even know we can change our life. We might as well be in prison. Then you hate that partner, you hate that job. We feel like a victim, we feel hopeless. So I go back every day to that same job, that same relationship, and you're living in hell. I mean, it's like cruelty to ourselves. So to really begin to change our own mind, to understand our own mind, and I think it's logical, then you have some sort of self-respect in this relationship, living in hell with some unkind partner. Why would I want to do that? But I understand. When we're overwhelmed by these emotions, we don't even realize we have a choice. We can't change our mind, and nor can we even change our life. Now that's why my prisoner friends are very brave. They can't change their life, they can change their life. But we might as well be in prison. I'm angry, I don't like my husband, I'm resentful, I'm jealous, I'm bitter, but I keep going back home every day with the same person. I mean, that's craziness. Because we have no self-respect. When I'm miserable myself, I have no self-respect, no dignity, no appreciation of my own worth, you know. And this is how Buddha talks about ego. Ego doesn't mean some big, powerful person. Ego, ironically, ego is like self-pity. Ego is being a victim, paralyzed, stuck, hopeless. I can't change. I can't do anything. This is a tragedy, you know. So the Buddhist approach is also, the reason is because we have no awareness at all about what is going on in our own minds. We are very aware about what is going on out there. From the moment we wake up in the morning until the moment we go to sleep at night. All we notice, all we think about is what's out there. Our thoughts are going in here all the time, but we don't pay attention. We do not know about our feelings and emotions until they come out the mouth. You know, you don't know you're angry until you're shouting. Or you don't know you're depressed until one morning you can't get out of bed. Because we don't pay attention. So a really practical aspect of this approach is literally learning to become more conscious in a very simple way of what's happening in your mind every second of the day. Before it's too late. Before I punch my husband. Before I want to kill the boss. This is the Buddhist approach in the most down-to-earth way. I think I need you people to ask me some questions now, come on. Then we can have talk and discussion, and what you want to know, I can discuss. Lots of things, whatever you like, okay? Anything at all. Talk to me, ask me questions. Do you have a microphone? Here's a microphone. Here's a person there. Please, good, thank you. Grab the microphone.
We're talking quite a lot about our instinctive responses.
Forgive me, I can't hear too well. The sound is not so good. Starting from.
You were talking quite a lot about our instinctive responses.
Yes.
Where does the instinct come from? And is it a good, bad thing, or we shouldn't even think of it in those terms?
Give an example of an instinctive response. The words you're using. So give an example. A practical example, what do you mean?
You were talking about the instinct of wanting to punch someone.
Okay, coming from anger, wanting to harm somebody. So you're asking about the instinct of anger, that strong feeling. So what's your question?
I'm not thinking specifically about the instinct of anger, but generally about instinct.
So your question is about instinct?
Yes.
Not about anger or love? So instinct means spontaneously doing something. Is that what you mean by instinct? Where you just do it without thinking? Is that what you mean by instinct?
Both of them, and I'm wondering where does it actually come from? What's the source of this instinct?
Okay, so what you mean by instinct is when you do or say something suddenly without thinking about it. Is that what you mean by instinct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so if you are a really good musician, keep the microphone. Keep the microphone. If you're really good at playing the piano, sit down. It's okay, you're so polite, you're already. So let's say you're really good at playing piano. Wouldn't you agree that you're doing it instinctively? You just put your hands on the piano and then out comes beautiful Bach. Wouldn't you say that now it is instinctive? Would you agree with that? No, try and follow my thinking, not you, no. So try and think what I mean. You sit with your hands on the piano and you just spontaneously play the piano, don't you? Would you agree with those words? Would you agree with that? So suddenly I spontaneously want to punch my husband. So then I will tell you it's exactly the same. You know very well that you can play piano spontaneously because you have practiced it. Well, if you have the instinct to punch your husband out of anger, it's because you practice anger. It's as simple as that. We have very different interpretations in our world, and this is what I do find fascinating, actually. So let's use the analogy of, again, playing music. I'll say to you, wow, amazing, you play such incredible piano. Why are you good at piano? You'll say, well, Robina, I have practiced for 20 years. You would say that, wouldn't you? You take on, and also one point there is you take responsibility, and you would be honoured to take responsibility, but you're good at piano because you practice. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Good, okay. So you can thank Mr. Steinway for the nice piano, because you can't play piano without a piano. You will thank Mr. Bach for writing the music, and you will really thank your teacher for helping you. But you are the main cause of why you're good at piano. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Good, okay, great. Why aren't you angry, Robina? Oh, that's my husband's fault. That's my mother's fault. That's my boyfriend's fault. Are you hearing me? So the Buddha's view is that whether you're good at piano, or good at killing, or good at murdering, or good at kindness, or good at lying, whatever it is, it's a bunch of habits. So the more you practice something, the more instinctive and spontaneous it becomes. But we have this, in my opinion, this very strange distinction in our world between emotional habits and technical or intellectual or creative habits. So the answer to why you're good at piano is exactly what Buddha says about why you're good at anger or why you're good at killing. Because you practiced it. That's why it comes spontaneously. So okay, now that demands that we look more fundamentally, because I can tell you, when I was a little girl, I was spontaneously angry. My mother didn't have to teach me. I knew how. So if we say I must have practiced it, that's confusing to us because I was just a little girl. So where did the instinct even in the first place come from? Okay, this gets us now to Buddha's view about what our consciousness is, what our mind is, and where it comes from. So if I'm a Christian, we know that my source is God, isn't it? If I'm a materialist, and I mean by that a person who says the mind is the brain, and that I know that I came from my parents. Would you agree with this? So my mother, and so that's why in psychology we blame mummy and daddy, don't we? Do you understand? So the Buddhist view is, okay, you can't blame God. I hear that Italians have very rude words for God. Maybe Romanians don't, I don't know. But, even some people like to blame God. So naturally we blame where we came from, isn't it? So the Buddhist view is your consciousness, and this is this business now about reincarnation. This is an Asian philosophical view that's been around for thousands of years, okay? Some hippie didn't make it up in the 1960s. Reincarnation is dealt with in great detail in the Buddhist psychological view of the world. I'll just mention it here, just as a thought. That, we come into this world, into our mother's womb, programmed with our own tendencies. Now, like Mozart, we can deduce, if you like, there he was when he was 6 years old or whatever, his mother gives him a piano, and off he goes, writing his sonatas. Clearly he must have practiced something like that before, if you think about it this way. And the same with your anger, or your kindness, or your killing, or whatever the habit might be. This is the bigger picture in Buddhism. It's the view about karma and reincarnation, which is a major component of all the Buddhist philosophical presentation of the world. That's another discussion, but it's answering from a bigger picture point of view. So the general one in life, if you can take the same sense of responsibility for your being good at piano, for your emotions, even that, forget about past life, you can begin to take responsibility. But we don't even do that. So, do you understand my point? So the habit to be angry, or the habit to play piano, it doesn't just come out of anywhere. It comes from because you've got the tendency and you've perfected that habit. So that even if we're angry every day, some people are angry, let's say, or jealous, or depressed, or loving every day. Well, we don't even there. We know if you play piano every day, you get better at piano. But we don't think that way even with our emotions. If a person is being patient and loving and forgiving every day, we don't think of it as they're practicing love, practicing patience, they just think, oh, they're just patient. This is how they are, But actually, if the Buddhist view is, every second we do and say and think something, we are programming ourselves and we become better at that. It's a very dynamic process. We understand it when it comes to creativity or intellectual pursuit, but not for emotional. It's a very different view in the world. Do you understand? That's why the fundamental approach in Buddhism is by knowing your own mind very well, recognizing, in my case, a tendency to be angry, let's say, since a little kid, then the Buddhist view is, don't feel guilty about it, don't want to beat yourself up. Recognize first, that is what causes me suffering. That is why I'm suffering. Not my sister who took my doll, but my anger is the problem. And that's hard to see, because we don't want to take responsibility for it. I would rather blame my sister, and then we always feel like an innocent victim. It's not my fault. I can't help getting angry, we say. So therefore we never try. So this idea that it's my anger and my love or my being good at music is quite a powerful concept. Because it demands I take responsibility. Are we communicating?
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else would like to ask a question? Here we are in front.
So it may seem maybe a little private, but
Can't use acoustics, that's a good.
do you hear better now? It may sound a little private, but
What, darling? I can't hear you so well.
okay.
Maybe to speak more slowly.
Okay. It may sound a little private,
Ah, good. Okay, go on. Be
but
quiet.
I just wonder what did you?
Yes, I hear you. Good.
Okay. But what are the main reasons?
What, darling?
What are the main reasons that made you come to the conclusion that you are more like towards Buddhism than Catholicism?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I'm sorry for that.
Please. I only speak Australian. You people all speak English. I have great admiration for you. Well, in the end, it's kind of very personal in the sense that certain philosophies appeal to certain people. I mean, if I'm a white supremacist, you can say that obviously that appeals to me. It fits my view, you know. So when I remember reading about one 19-year-old boy in America who read Hitler. He said, wow, I felt I'd like come home. Everything he said was so true. He said what I felt. So really, what you have to deduce that Nazism, white, racism, was in his mind already. Because when he read it, it felt familiar to him. Do you understand?
Yes.
That's an interesting point, isn't it? Like if you're a little girl and you go for the first time to see tennis, and you fall in love with tennis, it's like you recognize tennis. I'm going to be a tennis player. So you have a tendency towards that. So, okay, again, the bigger question of why you have what tendencies, that's dealt with in Buddhism with this longer week. It's simply, okay, it's the, for me, it's the philosophical way of presenting the world, the views, what I'm telling you, the way the mind works, how and the view that, of karma, which means my consciousness is mine, it comes from my past hard work, and as Dalai Lama said one time, karma is like self-creation. So all I can say is when I first heard the Buddha's teachings, I was wanting something again. I've been very radical in politics, and I wanted a spiritual approach again, but also philosophical. I didn't just want to pray and meditate. I wanted a way to understand, So I remember hearing the Buddha's teachings, and I remember the word karma, this idea of cause and effect, that everything we think and do and say kind of doesn't, it produces me, And I felt very empowered by that idea. And I love God, I was a good Catholic. So but the idea of no creator, and that we are responsible ourselves, and that we have this potential, which Buddha says he accomplished, to literally become this perfected person, based upon developing my own qualities and then benefiting others. I mean, what can I say? In the end, it's just, that's my worldview. It's the worldview that I find appealing and reasonable. I like to study it. And it's the way I say it, it's like, it's my working hypothesis. It's the view I'm using in my life. Also, in a practical sense, it's not just a question, I like this too, it's not just a question of merely believing something. So it's a bit like the difference between, oh, I believe in mathematics. I think someone would laugh at you if you said you believe in mathematics. It's helpful to believe in mathematics, but if you don't know how it works, there's not much use, is it? Your mother says, buy me 3 oranges, and you can't because you don't know how to count. So that's why the Buddhist approach is not technically believing in something, it's doing the job and then discovering each step of the way by doing the job that you're proving it to be so. So I like that process of healing, one step at a time, work on my mind, see if it's true that if I get less angry, I get more happy, if I get more kind, all these things. So one step at a time, not just believing it, but trying to do it and experience the truth of it. That's the approach that I like. It suits my mind. But I'm not against Catholic, I'm not against anything. I have great appreciation of anybody on this earth who looks into the meaning of life. I would never criticise any religion or any philosophy. So I can understand that.
Yeah,
But this is the one.
totally.
And very much the Buddhist approach also is not merely believing, but actually doing it. every day. And as the Dalai Lama says often to us in the Western world, the Christian world, those people who like Buddhism, he says, if you're practicing Buddha's teachings every day, using Buddha's methodology, and you get to a point where you find that what he said is wrong, then you must reject Buddha. And I like that approach. I like to say, Buddha is not the boss, we are. But not in an arrogant sense. It's meaning taking responsibility. That appeals. Does that make sense?
Yes, good. Thank you very much.
Someone at the back. Someone here. Okay. Next. Okay. Go. Okay.
Hello?
Yes, hello.
Is that too loud?
No, I can hear you. Good.
Hello, my name is Len.
I think because of the acoustics, it's good to speak a little bit more slowly.
Hello, my name is Vlad.
Happy to meet you, Vlad.
I was wondering, I wanted to ask you a little bit about the food. How do you see food?
Food?
Yes. What's like, is it helping you in any way?
Food?
Yes. Yes.
Well, I mean...
Well, I changed my diet recently and it really helped me a lot, so I was...
No, I understand. No, I mean, I understand it. Well, it's interesting because, in the Tibetan... In Tibet itself, as a country, they've got this system of medicine. They literally call it Tibetan medicine, and it's a bit similar to Chinese acupuncture, and it's a bit similar to the Hindu view, or anybody who practices yoga, maybe you know about the Hindu view about we've got this subtle physical energies. They call it prana or something. We've got these meridians. Based upon those, if you go to your Tibetan doctor, they will feel your pulses, they feel all this subtle energy in you, and they can see the imbalance of certain things. So in that sense, they will certainly recommend you don't eat this and you do eat that because that's enhancing certain problems. So it's sort of logical, but there's no real emphasis in Buddhism as a philosophical view of life or as a psychological approach that you should eat this or shouldn't eat that. There's no moralistic approach to it. But I think it's pretty obvious. And the scientific findings are really clear that if you eat lots of sugar, your mind will be more berserk, not to mention you'll get diabetes, I remember even in one prison in the UK, they experimented about giving the prisoners better quality vegetables. They said they could see a distinct difference in behaviour. So it's really clear it does make sense. I mean, it's obvious, But of course, because our body and our consciousness are very interdependent, isn't it? So that's my answer. Is that what you're finding? That it affects your mind?
Yes,
what you're saying?
Yes, it is mostly. I thought you would prefer to eat some sort of foods, you would not eat the other ones, and you sort of find a balance in between how food could support you, the meditation, and whatever
exactly.
you do.
I mean, it is that, isn't it? And we can see some people are much more sensitive, and if they eat sugar, they go berserk. Yeah, different people. But in the Buddhist one, certainly in Tibet, there's no real, it's not any spiritual aspect of it. It's really just a healthy aspect. That's what you're saying, isn't it? Yeah, that's all I can say. Thank you for that. This gentleman, are you okay with no air? We should open the windows, I guess. But we have windows open, we won't be able to hear. So yes, please. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
You talked about attachment and the concept of samsara or something like this, I think.
I've lost you down. I've missed you.
So you talked about attachment and the concept of samsara, or the concept of samsara, or attaching to things that we no longer need.
That we have strong neurotic craving for.
Yes, craving. Yes. Exactly.
Yes.
So my question is, when do we know that we are making steps toward detachment?
When do we know what?
When do we know we are making steps towards detachment? And when it becomes clear that we should go that way and not return to attachment?
I missed the last part.
Okay.
The first part I got.
So, repeating the last part.
Just the last part.
Okay, so the second question was, at which point do we know that we are naturally going towards detachment?
Going what?
Towards detachment?
Towards attachment.
Yeah, and not returning to attachment.
Well, okay. Well, let's just use simple examples, okay? in my relationship with Christian, my boyfriend. As I say. So the Buddhist approach would be this. When I say I'm in love with Christian, we would say it's 99% attachment. That means completely blissful, which is good, nothing wrong with good feelings, but one function of attachment is it completely over-exaggerates his beauty, his perfection, his handsomeness, and then completely over-exaggerate his role in being the cause of all my happiness. We feel that. We really can imagine the next 80 years, I have finally found happiness, and that's the lie of attachment. It does happen to bring good feelings, and nothing wrong with good feelings. That's called happiness. So if I've got massive attachment to him, let's say, but also at the same time, I also have the good qualities. I love him. That's altruistic. That means I want him to be happy. I have compassion for him. I have empathy. They're the good qualities. So if I only had attachment, I'd be like a vampire. I'd eat him for breakfast and then spit him out and then get the next one. That's when you only have attachment. So then the love and compassion are also there, but our trouble is we can't tell the difference. So in a relationship, you could say, the more I learn not to follow my frantic craving, neediness to get what attachment wants every second, because it's like a junkie inside me, but the more I follow that, that means I learn to be patient. I learn to be forgiving. I learn to be loving. So in a relationship, you would say, as you give up attachment, you don't become detached, you become more kind, more loving, more generous, more forgiving, and that makes it a decent relationship. But you could argue in relation to a certain object, let's say like chocolate cake, do you understand? Where the craving is massive, then you can see if only you follow your craving and only follow the attachment, you'll be, not to mention becoming obese, you'll get very sick. Not to mention your poor mind going crazy, because one way of talking about attachment in a very primordial sense, it's like being a junkie. Because all the time there's that cake, you think about it when it's not there, you're craving for it when it is there, you vomit, then you go to the toilet, you eat cake again. It's never ending. So then very much you'd say in relation to cake, the less attachment, the more detachment. I mean, you see the cake and your mind doesn't go berserk and you keep your hand in your lap. That's good. But it's very tricky. And the way Buddhism describes attachment, I mean, to really get rid of it is highly advanced, the level he talks about it. So all we can do is be practical in our daily life. So also your question also is interesting, because one of the misunderstandings, I would suggest, about attachment is that the opposite is only attachment. And that your question indicates that it's okay. And then if you have that in a relationship, then if I'm trying to be a good little Buddhist, and then Christian wants to go to the movies, oh no, I won't go to the movies, I'm detached. Would you like some tea, Robina? Oh no, I don't mind, I'm detached. Well, throw me out, I hope he does. That's really kind of unkind and inappropriate. That becomes indifference. So it's easy to mistake no attachment for being indifferent. And that's not the concept. That's not the way to be with humans. Do you understand my point? So it's a tricky one. But the basis of your question is really, how do we have confidence that the decisions we're making are valid and accurate? So I find that very interesting when it comes to our mind. Because I think the general understanding in psychology in our world is you can't really trust what goes on in here too much. Do you understand my point? You can't trust the subjective. But the Buddhist view is quite different. With these skills they develop, Islam, this technique of concentration, meditation, and there's very detailed presentation of the way the mind functions. Not in the way we describe in the West, because in the West we describe the brain, but the actual really sophisticated explanation of the actual cognitive process itself. And that crucially means really getting clear what are the characteristics of a neurotic state of mind. What is it that makes it negative? What is it that makes it extreme and painful? And what are the characteristics of the positive states of mind? They go into that in quite depth. So then you learn, based on that kind of theory, you then, on the basis of concentration, you become very skillful. And because you want to be sincere, you want to be honest, you want to understand your mind, you don't want to lie to yourself, then you become very skillful at knowing your own mind very well and becoming like your own policeman, your own therapist in changing yourself. Because it's based in a will and not being, you understand? So it's an inbuilt system to help you become very wise and very clear and very honest with yourself. Are we communicating? Good. Thank you very much. Somebody else.
Hi.
Hello.
My name is Flavio. Flavio.
Vlado.
Flavio.
Flavia.
Flavio.
Flavio.
Flavio. Okay. So, first of all, in regards to your answer before, in regards to detachment,
Yes.
in my experience, what I noticed is detachment helped me see myself more by staying away from attachment in a way,
Absolutely.
so to
You
speak.
stay away from the objects that activate your attachment, which make you go berserk. That's very intelligent. Perfect, yes.
And now I have more intuition to act more responsible towards others,
Exactly.
because now I know in myself how to respond.
Precisely. That's exactly right. Buddha would agree with every word you're saying.
So what I'm trying to say is that even detachment has its own purpose.
Okay, so what you need to do, I'm agreeing with what you're saying, I'm getting a sense of what you're saying, but maybe I need you to define more precisely what you mean by detachment, number one, and then number two, give me a scenario.
Okay. What I mean by detachment is in a way a sort of separation from
Stepping back.
Yeah,
Okay.
stepping back from society.
Okay, good. So stepping back from society, meaning going to retreat, doing a retreat. What do you mean by stepping back? Not going to work every day, not talking to people?
Not really not talking to people, but not trying to assure my own survival by going to work every day.
I understand. So the reason you step back from the world is so you can do what?
To listen more to...
Good, okay. So again, it's exactly the Buddhist approach. Exactly. So that means so go on.
And so now I discovered that I would rather dedicate myself more rather than go in the same way as I did before.
I understand. So what did you give up that you did before that you're not doing now that makes you see this? Unless that's too private.
No. Well, I guess it all started with craving.
Attachment, yes. Buddhist view is the same, they have the same meaning in Buddhist psychology.
A craving for having more joy, experiencing life more. So I was when I stepped back from.
So basically, you're talking about having less sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Yeah. No, not pleasure.
No, I didn't say that. I'm talking about attachment. The way Buddha would say attachment is this craving inside us, this sense of never having enough, and this craving to always get something to trigger a pleasant feeling. Is when there's something jumping inside us, and naturally the first level of it is to get objects of attachment. So stepping back from that, then that obviously, if that's your wish, you naturally will see your mind more clearly. Of course, that's intelligence. That's first level, entry level, grade 1, junior school, entry level Buddhism. So then your question is?
Okay, my question is...
Well, you don't have a question now. You don't seem to have a question. We're both agreeing.
Yeah, no,
So there's nothing to say. We just had a conversation. Do you have a question from this?
Yes.
Good.
So the question would be, do you keep that detached position, or do you go with what develops inside? Meaning, for example, in my experience, when I detached from things, the new feelings that I had were less without attachment, without...
I understand that, exactly. So let me just present the way Buddhism puts it, and I'm sure you'll understand it. Shall I?
Okay.
Or you're not finished?
No. I agree.
Okay.
And now I feel that the challenge is in being part of the world and not be too involved in it.
Okay, so this is, okay, so then now I can tell you how we disagree with that and I'll explain why. Shall I?
Yes.
Thank you very much. So remember I mentioned before this nice analogy that a bird needs two wings, wisdom and compassion. Okay. So as I also mentioned, the Buddha's whole approach from his own experiential findings is that ego, grasping, attachment, anger, pride, jealousy, low self-esteem, neurosis, victim mentality, all the misery we all know so well, that we think is normal, that we think is at the core of our being, he has found that we can utterly remove all that from our mind, utterly and permanently. Now that's kind of a radical concept, because we just don't have that in our culture. So that's what this is the wisdom wing. So if you just did that wing, then you would indeed give up sex, drugs, rock and roll, and you go to the mountains, you go into a retreat, you go to the supplement of your mind, you'd do the job as he's saying, you'd realise you'd achieve your own nirvana, you'd become this blissful, radiant, content, wise, compassionate person, and you cannot ever go back to the misery again. That's the radical approach Buddha has. We can accomplish that. Now, that's the wisdom wing. You've done the job, you're cool, you don't need the boring old world anymore. But the compassion wing is the more, if you think of it the two together, the more you do this inner job, not necessarily in the mountains, but in daily life, then of course you make choices. Well, I better keep away from that guy because he's really crazy and he might punch me and I might get angry, so you detach because it's intelligent. You might keep away from alcohol because you've got a bit of a weakness for it, but you may be okay with chocolate cake. You use your common sense. You be reasonable, you know, so that you can steady your mind, and then the more you can meditate, the more you know yourself, the more you can distinguish the neurotic states of mind from the valid ones, from the virtuous ones. So then you do it gradually, one step at a time. So as you develop this wisdom a little bit, you become more stable, less erotic, less detached, but you don't become detached from people either. You now necessarily become more connected to others, because you don't get disturbed by things, you know why they're all suffering, you understand suffering, the world doesn't make you crazy, it is no longer a danger to you, so eventually you totally practice the compassion wing. And that means Buddha would say, even life after life, you only now want to help others. There is nothing else to do, because you've finished the job of getting rid of ego. There is never any danger anymore. And you have infinite wisdom, infinite compassion, infinite kindness. Now you can only benefit others. You can never harm others, and you can never harm yourself again. So it's this balance of knowing what we can take, what we can do, what we're capable of achieving, one step at a time. Do you understand?
Thank you.
Good, okay, someone else. Two people there. Keep your hand up so she can see two people. Put your hands up, both of you. And then the other one down there, yes, good. Please, yes, talk to me.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can't see now.
Well, it's better without the knife.
Sometimes it is, I tell you, it's right,
Okay,
right.
let's try this.
Good, go on.
Related to the other question, would you say that you need to go to the drug, sex, and rock and roll phase in order to move forward?
I understand your point. Well, put it, I think we're a bit stubborn, and sometimes we have to break our leg before we realise that we've got to change, you know. So I think unless you, sometimes, okay, put it this way, unless we're really wise and quite sensitive and quite, you know, quite self-respectful from the beginning, as a kid, let's say, then I think we do just follow our feelings without seeing the consequences. So I think it can be a great wake-up call. But then lots of people, you know, go to the sex, drugs and rock and roll and go berserk, but never use it as a wake-up call because they don't know how to change. So it can be a great wake-up call. Certainly in my case it was like that, and my nature being quite extreme, I could see it was useful. But the only way it's useful is if you can access your intelligence and access your self-respect and know you better change. But once, if you get into the overwhelmed by alcohol, overwhelmed by fears and drama and victim, and you never see you can change, that's real suffering. So I don't think we have to do it, no. I don't think we have to. But if we do, it's an opportunity, definitely, to get a wake-up call. But I don't think it's necessary. I mean, you know, it's like, if you you know, the Buddhist view, if you're born as already a wise person, you don't have to learn those lessons. You can just move ahead and get even more wise. Do you understand my point?
Yes.
Yes. Thanks. Person behind.
Yeah, so my question would be, do you agree that the technological and scientific development of the Western world is
Scientific and technological what?
development of the
Development,
Western
yes,
world
yes.
is based on attachment, and that attachment can also add value?
Then you, I understand your question. It's a really good question. Thank you. Well, speaking really technically, okay, the way that Buddhism would describe the word and the work of the mind at a very technical level, one of the components of attachment, not at the emotional level, but at the level of conceptuality, it's actually a very busy, creative mind that enhances the characteristic of something. So a person who's a genius musician, you could say they've got incredibly developed conceptual attachment that can hear a simple sound and can embellish it. That's called creativity. But now that same person also has the emotional level of attachment. That's when you go up and down like a yo-yo, you're an artist, and you suffer terribly, you go kill yourself, you kill other people, and you're completely out of control. So there's the emotional level of attachment. But when it's really berserk, it's like intense, that's the real suffering. But you can have a level of mind that's creative, which is attachment energy, but you mix it with virtue and kindness and intelligence. But the crucial one to mix it with is the wish to help others and make the world a better place. So you can be a genius creatively, but be mentally ill. You can be a genius technologically, but just be greedy and want to make as much money for yourself. But you can be, I like Steve Jobs. I mean, I know he's controversial, but he was one of my favourite people. He had an absolutely ingenious, you could say, creative attachment energy mind. He never said, he saw things and was able to see from other points of view. So he had creativity in his attachment, but he had intelligence, and I think he had a very pure way to make the world a better place, I think. So it's a very interesting point. So, but it's got to be mixed with goodness and morality and ethics and intelligence and the wish to use this skill to help others. Otherwise, it's totally ego-based.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
How we can deal with our childhood trauma?
Thank you very much. Okay, this is an interesting point because, okay, let's just, if we take the model of the mind that we tend to, the basis of our, mostly our modern psychology, let's get agreement first. Would you agree that in general, the basis of our modern psychology is that we are the product of mother and father? First of all, yeah? That means they've given us the genes, that means they've given us the psychosis, that means, this first of all, just genetically, forget the behaviour. So first of all, we are literally the product of a mummy and daddy, right? So the first place we look, okay, so then secondly, we can also see that we throughout our lives, bad things can happen to us. Like you said, childhood trauma. Okay, so first of all, we think mother and father give us anger, and because it's through our genes. And then secondly, the way people behave towards us is the source of whether we're happy or suffering. That's also the fairly basic assumption we all work with. Would you agree with that? Everybody in general, yeah? So naturally, when I go to my therapist, of course, what she will do will ask me questions, and she will look back into the past, into the events. She'll check my body, she'll check my genes maybe, she'll check the DNA, you understand? But crucially, she will ask me all about my mother, my father, what the Catholic nuns did to me, the traumas that happened to me, the people that abused me, because that's where she will look to find for her the reasons why I'm miserable now, why I'm living in denial, why I get depressed, why I get jealous. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yes.
Okay, nothing wrong with that. But the Buddha would say, a fundamental piece is missing. And this is where the emphasis in Buddhism on working on your own mind itself. So, okay, the natural response is, let's say, we have parents who harm us, maybe daddy raped us, maybe mummy beat us. I mean, whatever the scenario is, we all know these things happen. So then, the second part though, even if we take a materialist view, the second part, it seems to me, we can obviously see, you could have two children in the same family, we know this, don't we, who have the same parents, but one of them is more relaxed, more easygoing, and doesn't hate daddy. The other one hates daddy. You get my point here? So that's already an interesting thing, isn't it? Because one of them doesn't mind Daddy and can forgive him, and the other one can't stand Daddy. So that's really obvious, something personal in that person, isn't it? Which doesn't come from the same parents. You're the product of the same behaviour and the same parents. Now that's emphasising the Buddha's point. That's emphasising the Buddha's point. Now, you know, you can have a person who maybe had a fairly good mother and father, but had, this is Buddha's view now, has lots of anger, lots of resentment, lots of manipulation, lots of neediness. That person necessarily will suffer more than the other kid because of what's in their own mind. And the Buddha's view is that that stuff in their mind does not come from mummy and daddy's genes, and is not the result of behaviour. It's catalysed by the behaviour. So the crucial point in Buddhism, and again just taking this point that I haven't discussed much, but it's the assumption here that we come into this life fully programmed in our mummy's womb, at the first second of conception, programmed with our own anger, our own love, our own kindness, our own forgiveness, lots of these qualities. There's another whole aspect of karma that answers why you have that mother, that father. But forget that one. So because Buddha's saying our mind is ours, then of course talk about what your mother did, what your father did. But Buddha says you won't find the answers totally in that. That might be helpful to remember the things because you've lived in denial of it, you haven't wanted to look at it, so it's good to remember it, you know, do you understand? So that you can confront what's inside you. But the real approach in Buddhism, and actually it's pretty intense, and if we're not capable, we have to start by looking at the events first. But the real one is to learn to, this is the point I'm making, to listen to and look at the responses within me to those events. Whether I live in denial, whether it's depression, whether it's anger, whether it's blame, whatever it might be, I have to become in touch with those states of mind and those conceptual, which are all conceptual stories. They're all my elaborate conceptual stories which are responses to those events. So that then the Buddha says, you know, if you can change those, then that's the secret to success. Mummy still did harm me, Mummy, Daddy did do that. And then if you can change your responses, your mind, your anger, you can give up the blame, give up the resentment, give up the jealousy, and it's not easy, and there's no moralistic reason to do this, it's for your own sake, then wow, that's the most direct way to deal with any traumas, or any happiness for that matter. But it's a pretty intense job, but that's the Buddhist approach. It's not a moralistic issue, or you shouldn't look at the past. Please look at the past. But as you see, that's where I can see, I know lots of people who, let's say, were abused as children, and some can never forgive, they can never let go of the anger, they can never let go of the resentment, and they really feel that that's justified. I can't ever forgive, I can never forget, so, I mean, all the Buddha is saying is, that's living in torture. But the tragedy is, when we think that way, we feel justified to think that way. But we're not noticing that Mummy and Daddy are dead. My resentment is what's poisoning me now. My anger is what is poisoning me. But we're so disconnected from ourselves, and that's the Buddha's view about ego, that I can't even realise that that is what's destroying me now. The events are gone. We might have to go through a process to get to that. But if we have this arrogance, I mean this fear and pride and refusing to let go, we are the only person suffering from it. It's pretty intense. That's why at the same time, I read about that woman on death row, 17 years, she eventually was released. I mean, I just find her so admirable, and I would say intelligent. She must have been in hell. Can you imagine, you're arrested with your husband, and they said that you killed 2 police. You know you're innocent. You're these innocent little hippies, you know. They could not believe what was happening. And of course, because you know it's not true, you think, surely they'll see the truth at some point. Well, it took 17 years to see the truth. You can only imagine the nightmare for her. And the husband even got executed. I mean, you can't even imagine, like, the going crazy in your mind, you know. But she had this incredible ability to realise, as she said, I couldn't change anything, but they couldn't take my mind from me. That's incredible. And she became this marvellous person. Now, at the same time, I read about another person on death row, also innocent. Now, we call him normal. He went completely out of his brain. Raging, fury, grief, loss, despair, went insane. With anger and rage and despair. Every day screaming, I did not rape and kill that woman. Now, the fact is, they were both innocent. The same scenario, both wrongly accused. One, without being rude, which had this incredible ability, because of her own mind, to work with it, to find a way to live with it without going crazy. The other one literally didn't know he could do that. That's the suffering of our minds, because he was caught up in the absolute belief that he was allowed to be angry, he was allowed to be crazy, because they caused it. So it's a really interesting, fine point. It's a huge one, you know, and it's not to hear it as religion, it's for one's own benefit, is the Buddhist point. Do you understand my point?
Yes.
Have I answered your question?
Yes.
So then when people come to me, you know, I don't give them a lecture about this. If a person's overwhelmed by misery, I don't start giving them a lecture about forgiving and you should change your mind. That's ridiculous. Maybe they never can. So I'll learn to work with them where they are and even agree, yes, your father's terrible. How dare he do that to you? Because when we're a victim, we're even too scared to speak it out. So even to give a person courage to say their father was evil for a person who's repressed it all their life is a very intelligent thing to do. And if you continue to help them, they'll slowly have this, you get some kind of courage to even trust what you think yourself. Then you can gradually keep moving forward, and then you forget your father. You know, at some point you let go. It's a very powerful process. And I mean, we do this every day. Any decent therapist would do this. But just the Buddha emphasizes that point. Do you understand my point?
Yes, thank you.
Good, thank you. Somebody else? Yeah.
Hi. Why do people believe that happiness will come at the moment when they will find a partner in their life?
Why do we believe what? That happiness what?
Will come in their lives when they will find a partner. Why do people believe that happiness will come in their life when they will find a partner?
Yes, I understand. Thank you. For me, I thought utter misery would come in my life if I had to live in the same house and live in the same bed with one person. It gave me kind of, I'd hyperventilate when I thought that. I'm joking with you. But I always joke if I had a husband and children, they'd be dead husband and dead children. So I made a very wise choice in my life. I mean, listen, oh, wow, you know, there's so many answers to that from the Buddhist perspective also, but I'll just keep it simple. I mean, the fundamental one here is, well, okay, no, it's very interesting. The Buddhist view of the neurotic parts of our mind, they call them negative states of mind, the disturbing emotions, the delusional states of mind. And it's very specific in Buddhist psychology. There's a very clear distinction between the neurotic bits of us and the positive bits of us. Not just so that, I think in our culture we give equal status to all of these and kind of assume that a normal person has a bit of anger, a bit of love, a bit of kindness, a bit of jealousy, a bit of attachment, and as long as you get a balance, you're an okay person. But Buddha's way more radical, as I'm suggesting. He says we can rid the mind of all the rubbish and grow all the goodness to perfection. And even his view is, in the Buddhist, when you study the Buddhist view of the mind in more depth, they talk about how all these neurotic states of mind that have an aspect of being very disturbing, but also have the aspect of being delusional, that then actually, what time do you have to finish? What's the goal? What's the time to finish?
5:30.
Marius?
5:30.
Thank you, okay. So, okay. So these negative states of mind, there's like a hierarchy of them in Buddhist psychology. The root, they call it the root delusion. And I think we don't really have an equivalent in our psychology. But it's this, the Buddhists would say it's this primordially deep, profoundly instinctive, mistaken feeling, sense of a separate, lonely, bereft, cut off, miserable little me. So because this ego, they call it ego grasping, and it's really, it's like primordial. And it's the deepest mistake in the mind, what it says. So then in this hierarchy, that's the root one. And it's rooted in fear. And on the basis of that, then comes this massive craving, this constant attachment to get what that supposed I wants every millisecond. And that's the junkie mind, the craving, that is trying to fulfill the needs of this little broken little I. It's very, I was thinking casually. That on the basis we live our lives as a separate I, as cut off from others, therefore not being worthy, therefore not having anything, not being satisfied. So clearly one of the most profound objects of attachment is another person, who almost, the deepest attachment we have is this craving to be seen and heard and approved of and praised by others. So it's almost as if we don't have others reflect back to us our own self, it's almost as if we don't think we exist. So the worst of the suffering of attachment is you're lonely, you're hopeless, you're nothing, you're nobody, you're empty, utterly nobody. That's the feeling of the worst suffering of I. So naturally the biggest, okay, cakes will do it, and music will do it, the object of the senses, but the major attachment we have is to be seen in a good light, to be praised and loved by others. So we can see that. We walk up, we feel okay, 27 people can tell us they like us. We won't believe it. We're hungry to hear it again. We're craving it, but we won't believe it. The moment one person says you're an unkind person, we will believe it immediately. All that's doing is proving that actually ego and attachment are those really suffering, awful reflections of being a nothing person. So therefore we're always hungry for something out there to fill us up. And the major one is another human being saying, you're a lovely person, Robina, or liking me, or approving of me, or in other words, this deepest attachment. I mean, if you look at a relationship like, with your boyfriend, or whoever you have, girlfriend, or whatever, people are very creative these days. So, the craving, the biggest one, is this one, we can see it. And we've developed over the centuries cultures. I mean, animals have it. This culture of a group, of a family, mummy, daddy, and babies, or daddy and babies, whatever it is now. Do you understand? So this is over these centuries, Buddha says, that's the way we've developed. And this is cultural, but it's the expression of this one. The expression of this one. Because the assumption, and even in our modern psychology would say, I think they define us as being social creatures in our nature who grow in response to being connected to others. That's why the modern psychology would say for a person going up into the mountains for many years, that seems like being autistic, like you're mentally ill. What are you doing up there on your own, We don't think that way. So then the Buddhist view is, when you put your own self together and get less attached and less neurotic, you actually are filling yourself up. You become this blissful, content human being, happy to be on your own. There's no craving to have other people hear your words. There's no craving to have other people praise you all the time. It's so deep in us. So then you can have a really delicious relationship with another person because you're now a whole person. I mean, speaking simply, it's just the deepest of all the attachments in us because it gets right down to the very sense of who we are. It's so primordial. A little bit like that. That's it.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Who else? Yes.
Hello?
Hi.
I have a question for you. Have you heard about the concept of unconditional love?
Yes.
I wonder if it's really possible, it's just a beautiful concept, and to be more specific, I mean that it's possible to have unconditional love between a man and a woman.
With what? Between?
A man and a woman.
Oh, in a relationship with me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. The Buddhist view would be, as I'm saying, we all, at the moment, as ordinary people, we have lots of attachment, lots of jealousy, some fears, resentful, angry, a bit sensitive, get upset easily. I mean, isn't it? Join the universe. That's kind of a normal person. Buddha would say that's being a samsaric person. So we tend to think, okay, that's normal, you do your best, Try not to kill each other. Try to love each other. Unconditionally, as you said. But when there's lots of ego grasping and lots of attachment, and then you cheat on me one time, it is beyond unbelievably difficult to forgive you for this because I'm constantly panicking that you're going to do it again, and then the hurt and the resentful. It's so hard. So the Buddha's idea is, of course we can have it, but it's a hard work, and that's the whole point of the Buddha's view. As we progress internally, working on our own mind, doing your own practice, lessening attachment, lessening neediness, lessening all these delusions, and it's very advanced to get to that point. Of course it's a point you can get advanced, not ordinary people, but we can do it, and his methods are saying that eventually, when I've achieved this level of such joy in myself, I don't have attachment. I don't have anger, I won't have resentment, I won't have jealousy, I'll have immense wisdom, immense clarity, enormous affection for you. you, well, there's no longer a barrier to having affection for you and kindness and compassion. But I'll also be very wise. So right now, if I've got lots of jealousy and attachment, and I try to love you for everything you do, I'll be stupid. You'll be out there cheating on me, and I'll be so stupid I won't even notice. Well, that's not intelligence, that's foolish. And in an ordinary sense. Now, if I am so advanced, and I can love you anyway, even if you do cheat on me, that also indicates that I've given up attachment, and I've contented myself. So giving up attachment equals being content in yourself, therefore not neurotically reliant upon you, always feeding my needs. So if I might consider there's a reasonable relationship with you, then good enough. Okay, let me give an example. A friend of mine in Australia, she happens to be a Buddhist. She's a grandmother now, and all these years her husband has been an alcoholic. So naturally in the beginning, she was sad and tried to change him, tried to hope he would give up being an alcoholic. Do you understand? But over the years, she finally came to the acceptance that he wasn't going to change. Now, often what happens then, you know, when you build up this wish he will change, you try to manipulate him to change, you get angry because he's an alcoholic, you talk about him to your sister, you criticise him, you fight with him, and finally you realise he's not going to change. And then like ordinary person, you'd be angry and resentful and bitter, but you'd never leave. So she realised at some point she had two choices, stay or go. So she weighed up the benefits. She thought, okay, he's kind, he's generous, he doesn't vomit over anybody, he just sends himself to sleep every night, but he's a nice, good man, you know. So she weighed it up and realised the benefits to the whole family were definitely that she should stay. So once she made that decision, that means she loved him unconditionally. She's accepted his reality. She accepted she can't change him. She appreciates his good qualities, and she has her own life, and she's relaxed in herself. He's still an alcoholic. He drinks himself to death every night, but she accepts it, doesn't try to change him. Now that's wise. I'm not saying she's a saint, but it comes to this decisions in ourselves to be realistic. Because the more attachment we have, the more fantasy we have, or maybe he'll change. If he changes, we'll manipulate him to change, then we get angry if he doesn't, just end up being frustrated. But she accepted she couldn't change him, so she decided she accepted him for who he was, and therefore she was happy and relaxed. Has her own life, goes to her Buddhist retreats, loves the grandkids, doesn't fight with him, doesn't criticise, and her kids don't know. I mean, the grandkids just see granddad, you know, he's very controlled. Do you understand my point? So the work is internal. We can do that even before we get too realised. We can learn to accept the other person, know there's something worthwhile there, appreciate the good qualities, and then live with that. But our trouble is with attachment, it's like this neurotic perfectionist that is never happy and always wants more, always wants to be the perfect thing, so it's always complaining. It's like a bottomless pit, you know? Because it takes work, but it's possible. Do you understand my point?
Yes.
But it's hard work. It's not some sentimental thing to do. It's pretty intense, you know?
That's true.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Okay, yes.
I would like to speak with you about freedom.
So, where are you? I can't see you.
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Okay, good. Go on, talk to me.
So, as I can see the world nowadays, we are enslaved by our bodies because we have our needs, families. Need to eat food, need to sleep,
That's right.
or other things.
That's right,
We
exactly.
also have need to be in a relationship with other people because we are social species,
I
right?
understand that.
And we are also enslaved by our emotions, by all other factors in the world that are there. How are you finding the freedom when you are a Buddhist? How can you find the freedom within all those restrictions of the world?
So you mean okay, that's the job I'm talking about.
Because actually everyone wants to gain the freedom.
So the freedom, could you just give me your understanding of freedom, this freedom you're talking about? Which freedom is this? You're talking about the Buddhist idea of nirvana, liberation from suffering. Or are you just talking daily ordinary words?
Not really from suffering.
Okay, well.
Because yes, maybe suffering as well. Because
Well, I mean, this is what I'm really saying here. This is what I'm saying all here. You know, to do this job I'm talking about, to do the ideal scenario, to do the job seriously and quickly, best to give up sex, drugs and rock and roll, give up the husband, give up the mortgage, don't care about food, accept anything and you go to the mountains and do these incredible internal skills in order to rid the mind of the rubbish, and then you become this blissful marvelous being, and now you can come down the mountain and join the human race and have a good life. But most of us won't do that, okay? We'll do it in daily life with each other, but that's what the hard job is. That's what the hard job is. That's where Buddhism is learning to become deeply and intimately and precisely clear about the contents of your own mind and owning them, rather than, oh, I can't stop eating chocolate cake, it's a chocolate cake's fault. I can't stop getting angry, it's the husband's fault. As long as I have that view, nothing will change. But if I have the view that the anger is mine, the cake, the attachment to cake is mine. So with its introspective daily practice, you get more courageous. It's the first point of owning my own states of mind. And then learning to distinguish them from the object. So maybe I'll keep away from my husband when he's angry, so I don't get angry. Maybe I have to practice discipline, not to stuff too much cake in. So it's hard work. But when I know the internal, this clear introspective process of knowing my own mind and knowing my job is to change that, then I can become more skillful in the world. It's completely possible. Of course, it's just a point. But the end, you don't seem satisfied with that question.
No, not that I don't seem satisfied. I just feel that I actually achieved the freedom within me. And
Sorry, what?
I achieved the freedom.
You have achieved.
The freedom within me.
You have achieved. Past.
Yeah.
You've already achieved.
Yeah.
I'm very happy for you. I
can feel that, but I wanted to get the view of the Buddhist person. You know, the other view of that topic. How do you get this?
But that's what I've been saying all day.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm very happy you achieved freedom. I should guess, maybe Buddha should ask you what your methods are. I'm very happy with that.
What?
What's your methods of getting freedom? What do you mean by freedom?
I mean that I'm in a good state of mind. Like, I'm every day happy now.
You what?
I'm happy every day.
Good.
Even within this restriction, I can feel free. I can feel like I can swim within the waves.
Okay. May I ask you some questions?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Do you have a husband?
No, I have a girlfriend.
Do you have children?
No.
Do you have a job?
I have.
Do you have good health? Question to you. Oh, wait, please wait. This is my question. The Buddhist view of freedom would be when if that happens, you would not change 1 millimeter internally. You'd recognize it because you really literally have, and the freedom Buddha's talking about, I'm not trying to be kind of smart here, I'm just giving you the answer, is beyond attachment, beyond anger, only in bliss. Unbelievable, infinite compassion and infinite wisdom. So if that were to happen, you'd recognize the suffering, but it wouldn't affect you too much. So my feeling is, I know certainly me, where I'm at, if that happened to me, I'd process it a bit better than I might have 20 years ago, but I had a bit of processing to do to come to the point of being happy again. So if you can say that you can be equally happy when the bad things happen, from the Buddhist perspective, that's a sign of success. So Buddha would suggest, that's the way he would talk about freedom. But I'm delighted with freedom. I mean, I'm well done. I'm rejoiced. Are you communicating with me?
What?
Are we communicating?
Yeah, we are communicating.
Okay. But the job I'm doing is the same as the job you're doing. If you're talking about the same job, it's know your mind and adjust your mind. And then not be dependent upon having happiness when isn't dependent upon having a beautiful girlfriend, a beloved friend, and a good wife, a good job, good health. That's normally the way we are. So when things do go well, it's cause how marvelous that we have it. We can afford to be happy.
Actually, I must say it happened when the things went bad. In my life, and that's when it happened.
Okay, good.
And I realized that everything is actually meaningless. That's why I don't have to care about this.
Good job, you're welcome. Thank you very much. Up here. Up there and then. Okay. Yes.
So, another question. We were talking before about wisdom and compassion.
Yeah.
So, let's say you find yourself in a relationship with another person.
What?
You find yourself in a relationship with another person.
Okay then.
Okay. And let's say that person is crossing through a period of ignorance. And so...
Just keep it all
So let's say
The
that
person's having a problem and they're being mean or something, so what's the question? Go on.
the person before.
No, you can do. Just tell me, I'm talking to you with the microphone.
Okay.
I'm talking to you. So you've got a real relationship and the person's being a bit ridiculous, right? So what's the question?
So the question is.
Keep it on.
Okay. So the question is, what do you choose when you are in a position that person abuses your kindness?
Of course not.
You choose compassion or wisdom?
That's up to you. Depends when you act. That's exactly my point about my friend who's got an alcoholic husband. That's the answer. So let's say that woman in that case, let's say that my friend in that case was very victim, very angry, very hurt, in other words, very reliant because of her attachment on her husband behaving nicely for her to be happy, which is typical. But she wasn't, that's the point. She was more advanced, so she could make a wise decision to stay in a situation where she had an alcoholic husband, that she weighed up and realised that was the best thing. But if she'd been in another place internally and was dependent on him to make her happy, and she'd be crazy if he keeps being an alcoholic, her best decision would be to leave. So it's up to what you can handle. It's up to what you can handle. You have to know your mind well enough. Literally, that's the answer. That's what wisdom is.
Thank you.
Okay. Here and here. Yes,
There are two questions.
Yes.
What is the meaning of your life? Or what brings meaning to your life?
Well, I mean, if it's not what I'm doing and saying every day, I'd be in serious trouble, wouldn't I? If this is only part of my life, I wonder what there is left for me to do. Eat cake, go to the movies, I do all that too. This is the meaning of my life. This is what I'm doing. This is my life. This philosophy is the one I'm working with, and I happen to have the job of having to speak it out to others. So, obviously, I'm trying to do the two wings of the bird. I'm trying to work on myself, if I'm a cook here, and what I'm doing is telling you cake recipes, you'd be a bit disappointed to hear that I never make cakes. You'd think, what a phony. So if I'm not doing this job seriously in my daily life, then I'd be a bit of a phony, wouldn't I? So every word I'm saying here it's completely correct Buddhist philosophy and psychology, but spoken through the filter of my experience of it, trying to convey it. So this is the purpose of my life, to try to develop myself and develop the two wings of the bird. Okay. And the second question. You had two.
Yes. The first was what is the meaning of your life and what brings you
Well, doing this job. Within the fact that we're all different. Okay, I'm not a very advanced practitioner. If I look at one of my teachers, for example, he never sleeps. For him, sleep is a disgusting waste of time. So this is, again, in our world, that's weird. But he's this great practitioner, a meditator, doesn't need sleep, and also is driven by this immense compassion to want to be not wasting time so that you give to others. So I'm not a natural. I love my sleep, but I'm doing it one step at a time. So it gives purpose to my life, and it is the purpose of my life. Do you understand? Yes. One back there, one here. Yes, and one here. So this one is very easy.
Hello.
Hello.
My question is, how can we center ourselves so nothing can shoot us?
How can we?
Center ourselves.
How can we?
So.
How can we?
Center.
What?
To plant our roots deep. So.
Please forgive me, I can't hear you. I'm so sorry, darling. How can we?
Center ourselves.
Center.
Yes.
So you've got a certain definition of this word center. You must have read it somewhere or you use it. So I need you to tell me what you mean by that, because I don't use that word.
So anything happens to us, nothing can shoot us.
If something happens, nothing.
So if anything happens to us, then
nothing can shake us.
Doesn't shake us. So I used the extreme example before, saying, if her girlfriend is raping her, she's cut, well, this is the job I'm talking about. Every word I'm saying here, speaking in a simple way, is the job that Buddha said he did to get rid of all delusions, which are why we suffer, and to be able to develop infinite wisdom and compassion so that we don't suffer and so that we can help others. This is the job I'm describing. And it's a long-term job. So in other words, lessen attachment, lessen anger, lessen ego, lessen fears, which we think in our culture are normal, but from Buddhists say are not, we can get rid of them. That's why the view is quite radical, and it's hard to hear it. This is the God. This is the God. In other words, every day you get less attached and less angry, you'll be more stable, more reasonable, less crazy, less upset, less hurt, less resentful. That's the bottom line. That's the job. It's one step at a time. And it's internal. And it's hard work. Don't say Time to...
I have two questions.
Yes, darling.
Can Buddhists solve mental illness or disorder?
Okay, it's a very interesting question. So I think it gets us again, like I said here about the word centre. I said there about the word freedom. So, you know, if we were describing mathematics in this, we would be very clear about our definitions, wouldn't we? If every word I said here, if you didn't understand, I'd have to tell you the definition, and then we communicate, wouldn't we? So I think in this kind of casual, psychological, philosophical discussion, we've all got different definitions for all sorts of words, right? It's very fascinating, isn't it? So, I forgot what you said. What did you say? Sorry. What did you say?
Can Buddhists solve?
What?
If Buddhists can solve.
Oh, okay, yes, thank you very much, yeah. Okay. So what I think in our culture, please see if I'm speaking correctly, what we mean by that is, you know, if let's say you're what we call bipolar, or, you know, the terms we use, we'll be making up the last 150 years, usually the terms that they didn't use, you know, even 200 years ago. So there are different terms we use now for the different ways we define when the mind is not stable. Would you agree? That's true, isn't it? So then give an example for me, please, of a term that you would consider mental illness. You tell me an example.
I think anxiety.
Anxiety. Okay, good. So anxiety would be a mental illness. Is depression a mental illness? We call depression a mental illness, don't we? Do we call anger a mental illness? Now, isn't that interesting? You know, I think it's just the medical companies making money out of it all. They found a particular chemical that works with calms the depression down, so they call it the mental illness and make it sound very noble. But, you know, anger, I think if they find a medicine to fix anger, they'll make $1 trillion, you know, overnight. And suddenly become a mental illness, and you all get off the hook. Oh, I've got a mental illness, I can't help it. Well, the Buddha, this sounds quite shocking, but I'm meaning this quite literally, so please hear me. The Buddha's view, as I'm suggesting, you know, is we've got this particular lot of states of mind, and I call them the voices of ego. Now, we call them normal. If you've got some anger, and some jealousy, and some attachment, that we call that normal, and you wouldn't be called mentally ill, would you? You might get panic every now and then, but you wouldn't consider it, because it happens every day. So we call that normal, would you agree? We agree? So then, if you have extreme anxiety every day, then we say it's a mental illness. Okay, maybe some days you get a bit despondent, but you're not deep in despair in your bed for 6 months. So all Buddha's saying, and try and hear my words properly, we are all mentally ill. It's a question of degree. And I truly think that's the best way to put it. It's not meant to be negative, it's not meant to be hysterical, it's just the Buddha's view is that any attachment, any neediness, any neurosis, any anxiety, any anger, any jealousy, is a mental illness. He doesn't use that word. I think Buddha 2,500 years ago would really have liked that word. But it's just shocking to hear it like that. Because what that's indicating, which is what the Buddha is saying, long term, we can completely heal our own mental illnesses. But that doesn't mean if you're seriously mental ill. He says we have the potential to do that. But to even get to start that job, you've got to be pretty intelligent already. I mean, if I were, you know, seriously psychotic and imagine worms coming out of everybody's ears, I don't think I could do much myself. If I'm so severely mentally ill I can't get out of bed any morning, it's too much to expect me to do it myself. So this idea of being your own therapist already implies we're pretty stable already. You can see my point. So if a person comes to me with very serious unhappiness, like I said before, I wouldn't start giving them lectures about working on their own mind. But if we can hear these words, that shows we understand it. So that the Buddha's view is, of course, everybody has the potential, not always the right conditions. Vast literature about how it is actually innate in all of us, this utter potential, that these delusions are not at the core of our being. So of course you've got to take in the mind, the Buddha's view, that we have many lifetimes to do it. So that's another discussion, okay? That's in the Buddhist view. So yes, absolutely Buddha would say we can. But sometimes maybe it's so severe, you can't. Because at that time you can't do much. But in principle, in theory, Buddhist view is all these neuroses, the voices of the ego, are not, by definition, at the core of our being, at the core of our consciousness. That we finally can get rid of them. It's a pretty intense job to do, but that's the actual Buddhist point. But that is the question of what you can do at different times. And half the time, people who are mentally ill, the job is to help them protect themselves. You can't help them help themselves. So that's why you've got to have drugs and support and loving friends so you don't go and kill people, you know? Do you understand my point?
Yes.
I mean, I've got a friend on death row in Kentucky, my friend Mitch, who's a Buddhist, tells me about him, and I know him. He's really quite mentally ill, serious. He thinks about torture all the time. So he's a nice guy, he's very quiet, and you know if you're really attached to food, don't you think about it all the time? Is it in your mind? You think about breakfast, then you think about lunch, then you think about afternoon tea. We fantasize. That's what attachment does. So some people think about killing people all the time. Some people think about jumping on girls all the time. Some people think about stealing all the time. There's obsessive habits in our mind, you know. So then when they're really serious and you can't stop the thoughts, I mean, that's mental illness. You go crazy. But in theory, Buddha's view, psychologically speaking, philosophically, this view altogether says they're not integral to who we are. And so for me, as an ordinary person, you know, it's encouraging. Because I think ego, we spontaneously feel that these are at the core of our being. And when we're depressed, it's like we believe I am a depressed person. We define ourselves by depression. We define ourselves by our misery. That's terrible, you know? Then we have no hope. But if we have the idea that it is possible for me to work on my mind, even tiny amounts, that's encouraging. Do you understand my point?
Yes.
Thank you. Yes.
I want to talk about psychological symptoms or psychological disease. It's about those situations when you have some symptoms that the doctor are saying. The doctor is saying, you did all your checkups, we don't know what you have, and you find out after a while that it's actually psychological. So the symptoms that you experience has a backside or cannot be experienced physically. So, for instance, if you have a headache, your brain is okay, or if you have stiff muscles, also there is nothing wrong with the muscle itself.
I think that's what we say. No, I know, that's interesting. So that's why, for me, right now we are very familiar, aren't we, in our modern world with many different medical systems, many ways of presenting illness. So you've got your acupuncturists, you've got your Tibetan doctors, you've got your homeopathy. Maybe 100 years ago we wouldn't have heard of those, So, many people have the experience of going to a regular allopathic doctor, but you go to your chiropractor, he'll fix you in one day. You go to your acupuncturist, he'll fix you. So I think we've got to, look at other methods. I'm just saying this. There are other ways of interpreting. And certainly the medical system or acupuncture are way more subtle ways of interpreting the inner health. I'm just talking this way. So maybe, I don't know whether it's something, I'm just talking here. Just because we haven't got one answer in one particular system, it doesn't mean it's psychological. That usually means you're making it up, which is very arrogant, I suppose. I mean, if you're feeling a pain, but they can't see a physical symptom of it, that's very arrogant to say you're making it up, which is what tends to happen, isn't it? Are we communicating about the same thing?
Yes.
If so what's your question then?
And what about when you are very okay with when you are very okay with what happens and you have somehow complete acceptance of the symptoms or of the experience?
I'm having trouble understanding you.
When you have
Take the microphone away further.
When you have a complete acceptance.
When you have a what?
Complete acceptance.
Of whatever's happening in your life.
Okay, or about your body.
Or your body.
You have such symptoms.
What do you mean you have such symptoms?
I mean, psychological symptoms.
You have to tell me more. I can't answer you otherwise.
It's about like a symptom that goes away when you have a very high state of consciousness and you see that it's not related to the body. You don't need a painkiller or something to fix it. It's something that is very random, that goes away, that comes, but
you're okay with it, you accept it, can you call it then that it's something karmic?
Okay.
It doesn't bother you, even though it would be okay.
I understand. Well, you say the
You
word
have to
karma. Well, to use the word karma 3 minutes before we finish, I can't talk about that, it's too late. Maybe we'll talk about the second session, I don't know. But I'm thinking I'm hearing what you're saying, and you sound to be quite reasonable. I think what you do, it sounds good, except if you can't change it, yes. Certainly, they would say karmic. And if you can't change it, I mean, that's another way they say in Buddhism, if you can change it, hey, honey, change it. But if you can't, like my friend on death row, when you learn to be accepting it, be happy with it. My friend with the alcoholic, if you learn to accept it, be happy with it. It's the same with your own body. I agree, absolutely. That's intelligent. That's wise. I don't think I've answered your question.
So, when you want to change it, I think you should have a strong intention to do it.
Well, if you want, okay, if you want to change something, of course you have to have a method. But the question I'm getting from you is if you can't change it, and it happens occasionally, and learn to live with it, that sounds perfect, totally perfect. What's wrong with that? You seem to be saying already, I don't think. So we're not communicating anymore. So let it be, and if you really want to talk about it, come up later and I'll answer.
Okay.
So I think we should finish. But I want us just to finish. I think we start with a little kind of prayer, but I want to end with one. And often in Tibetan Buddhism, prayers are just really like aspirations. You're stating kind of a purpose. So here we're just going to have two little prayers. One is, we call it a dedication. And it's kind of saying, here we've been for 2 hours, and we haven't, it's been 2 hours. As many moments as there have been, Buddha would say, is as many seeds we've planted. Nothing goes astray, everything gets stored in our mind. So we think, okay, we've got 2 hours listening, thinking, analysing, checking up to see if there's something useful here that we can take with us as tools in our daily life. And fantastic, if there are, then great. So we think maybe we nourish these seeds from this moment with our continued work on ourselves, our ability to help others, so we can develop our marvellous potential, Buddha says we have, for our sake and the sake of others. And the second little prayer, they're very short, this is basically saying, aspiring that compassion grow in the hearts of all. And I'll sing it in Tibetan language.
Welcome everybody, and welcome Venerable Robina Courtin. Thank you. We are happy that you are here in Google with us after being in Bucharest and Tibet. Yes. And the invitation of the group, student group from Bucharest. And it's the first time that you are in Romania. I hope you enjoy it.
I am sorry enjoying.
So, Venerable Robina.
I like Romanians.
Already.
And Romanian cities. I like cities, you see. I like Bucharest, I like the cities.
Venerable Robina was born in Denver in the mid-40s. Yes. And she was educated as a Catholic, in God, as she said. And about 19 years old, she became a hippie and then a radical activist and black and feminist. And then, because she wanted to go back to something spiritual again, she arrived to martial arts. And eventually she met her two developed in Lama Sulama Yeshe and Lama Zohar and Mochi. And 18 months later, she was ordained. She became a Buddhist nun in early 1978. Since then, she worked full-time for the two Lamas organization FPMD, which stands for Foundation for the Preservation of the Mahayana Tradition. And over the years, she served as editorial director of Wisdom Publications, editor of Mandala Magazine, executive director of the Liberation Prison Project, and now she's teaching Buddhist philosophy and psychology, traveling full-time around the world, teaching Buddhism. Madam Robina, thank you for being with us today.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Apparently some of you were at the earlier talk, is that right? Yes. Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Apparently some of you were at the earlier talk, is that right? Yes. Okay. So I'm going to have to repeat myself a little bit. That's okay. I think the topic now is how to be happy, is that right? So it says, okay, that's right. Well, it's very interesting, you know, we were talking already, and I will continue, we'll talk more, but I'll say maybe we'll see. But one way you can say that Buddhism takes as a basic, as a fundamental assumption. We all want happiness, and we all don't want suffering, you know. So if we look at Buddha's approach to this, in Buddhism, you know, there's many kind of ways of presenting Buddhist philosophy, Buddhist psychology, kind of various packages, if you like. So I'm from the Tibetan tradition, you know, the Dalai Lama, and Buddhism was in Tibet since about 8th century, I think. And Buddhism is presented differently over the world, many places. But in Buddhism, in Tibet, there's this, I mentioned earlier actually, this kind of monastic university system where they study in depth the Buddhist philosophy, Buddhist psychology, Buddhist metaphysics. So, you know, it might not be evident to many of us, but actually it's really a worldview, a way the world is. Why is the world what it is? What is this? What is that? What is this human being? What is happiness? What is suffering? So one way of framing all of the Buddhist philosophy, and indeed psychology, you could say it's within the framework of morality or ethics, and that's in the framework of happiness and suffering. So we know in general, you could say, you know, an action, something that causes suffering is something that comes from anger or harming others. Well, that sounds like morality and ethics. And something that causes happiness would be kindness to others. Well, again, that sounds like morality and ethics. So then, that's one point. So then, if we look at the Buddhist understanding of the mind, we began talking about that before. And Buddhism indeed has got a very elaborate presentation of the way the mind works. And as I mentioned earlier, this information is not coming from studying the brain or things like this, which is the way we approach it in the modern world, and that's okay. But the Buddha's approach is coming from that marvelous Indian tradition that existed hundreds of years before the Buddha, 3,000 plus years ago. These amazing beings who existed then in India, their main topic was the nature of self. Who we are, what is happiness, indeed what is suffering, and crucially, what are the causes. And so Buddha came out of that tradition and then diverged in his own direction. So basically, then you could argue that one way of saying what Buddhism is a method for how to get happy, a method for how to stop suffering. And indeed, how to cause happiness and how to stop causing suffering. So all of Buddhist psychology is presented in that context. So as we mentioned before, the Buddhist model of the mind, you could say there is basically, we can see, and I think Western psychology would agree, there are thousands of states of mind. In fact, I've heard, you know, every second we have thousands of thoughts. So it's really quite complex what goes on in here. And this really is Buddha's expertise, I would suggest. It doesn't mean you like his expertise, that's okay. He's not a creator. He's not asking us to believe what he says. He's simply presenting what he has found to be so. So within our mental consciousness, all our thoughts, feelings, emotions, unconscious, subconscious, instinct, intuition, There's this kind of, these very many different things that are described. And from the Buddhist point of view, all the thoughts in our mind, all the thoughts dealing with emotions, etc., we can divide them into three categories, three states, three kinds of states of the mind. So on the face of it, it seems a bit simplistic. We've got those states of mind that are negative, neurotic, delusional, disturbing, afflictions. These are all terms they use in Buddhist psychology, all synonyms. Then you have, or negative, then you have positive, virtuous, reasonable, productive states of mind. So there's a third category, and they're called, virtuous, whatever. There's a third category, they refer to them as neutral. But what they don't mean they're not important. These, I like to call these the mechanics of the mind. And in Buddhism, great attention is paid to these. So examples of a so-called neutral state of mind, the way they're talking, is concentration, attention, good memory. There are many of these they describe. And we all know we've got those. But these are, what they're talking about in Buddhism, they're not innately, they're not in their nature good or bad, virtuous or non-virtuous, but they're utterly necessary. So, if you want to learn to be a better human being and do the job that Buddha is suggesting we can do, which is how we've been talking, really know your own mind very deeply, you start by, then you need very good concentration. You need to pay attention. You need a good memory. Well, so you need to do that to make a cake. Well, so does a murderer. So does a sniper need very good concentration. Or a thief needs mindfulness. Mindfulness really is a simple state of mind that is learning to not forget what you're doing from moment to moment. That's a crucial state of mind to do anything. If I decide to walk out the door and I get there halfway and I think, oh, what was I doing? Well, that's called bad memory. Well, these are just interesting states of mind we've all got. But in Buddhist psychology and in Buddhist meditation technique, that one we mentioned before called single-pointed concentration, invented by these Indians hundreds of years before the Buddha, these amazing Hindus, in their investigation internally of the nature of self, of who we are, then these are developed to an incredible degree of subtlety, So the Buddhist job, the job of being a Buddhist then, is, as we mentioned, is to rid the mind, eventually, that's what he says we can do, which sounds a bit radical to us, totally rid your mind of all the rubbish, all the ego stuff, all the fears, all the dramas, all the attachment, all the anger, all the pride, all the jealousy, stuff that we totally take for granted. And why would we even want to get rid of those things? Not to mention, how is it possible to get rid of those things? Well, very simply, because they're the cause of suffering. Who's suffering? First, yours. And then, of course, on the basis of these, we use our body and our speech to harm others. It's pretty obvious. Look at the world. Then you've got the positive states of mind. Pretty clear. Kindness, forgiveness, compassion, intelligence, these words. We know these. And these, for the Buddha, are the positive ones, the virtuous ones, the reasonable ones. As far as he's concerned, they are at the core of our being. They define who we are. So this, it's kind of a radical concept, it's a radical idea about the mind. Most of us instinctively, and all of our Buddhist, and all the materialist models of the mind, would suggest that all of these states of mind, anger, attachment, love, fear, jealousy, they're normal states of mind. And a normal human being has a little bit of all of them. And even we think that this, for example, anger, jealousy, for example, this simple word, we say, oh, they're normal. It's normal to be angry. It's normal to be jealous. It's normal to be depressed. And I think what we mean by that is you'd be abnormal if you didn't have them. So therefore, in all of our psychology, in the modern psychology, there's no concept of not having these. There's no concept of any approaches to getting rid of them. There isn't anything like that. So even these words are so simple, in a sense they're hard to hear because they're not at all how we think. So what Buddha has found is this person, is this guy, 2,500 years ago, who came out of this amazing tradition, went through that tradition, learning all these things, absorbed all that philosophy at the time, and then through his own investigation in the depths of his own mind, this is how they talk in Buddhism, this is not how we talk in the world, deeply inside his own mind, beyond the grosser levels of conceptuality and sensory, then he did this job, literally, of ridding his mind of all the rubbish and growing all the goodness. Speaking, really simply, there's way more to it than that. But this is what Buddha has found. So that's why, to understand then Buddhist ethics, Buddhist psychology, which is really crucial for a person who really wants to practice Buddhism. You have to kind of unpack these words. Well, what is suffering? What is ethics? Why is something good? Why is something bad? What is virtuous? What is non-virtuous? We can say these words pretty easily, but I think we really need to be very clear, you know. So, okay, mostly in the world, you know, we think of religion. Generally speaking, I think most of the religions, the ones we know well, they assert a creator. That's the deep assumption I think we have about religion, you know. So, you know, I'm a Buddhist nun. Sounds like religion. But the Buddha is not a creator. He doesn't mention, there's no concept of a creator in Buddhism. The view is fundamentally different, quite fundamentally different. Therefore, you know, so then secondly, I remember I remember asking a priest, a Catholic priest, a friend of mine, I asked him, by definition, what is a sin, you know? So he said, by definition, a sin is going against the will of God. Now we understand that. That means because God is the boss, God created me, God created the universe, God is the source of all existence. So therefore, God also, naturally, how we think of morality, is God also has the power to reward and punish. I think this is a concept we are very familiar with. Now, it's interesting, but in my mother's household, it was exactly the same. When Mummy says, don't do that, and I, being clever, say, why not? We know her answer, because I say so. And if we think about what we mean by good and bad, morality, law, it's the same everywhere. We feel, you know, there's sort of a piece of information, instructions imposed upon us from the outside. So if you're a good person, you obey the laws. If you don't obey the laws, you're naughty, you get punished. You don't speed too fast on the road, you'll get punished. You don't steal, you'll get punished. So a naughty action, a negative action, we tend to think this instinctively. It's something that someone else says you shouldn't do. Okay, the priest did say, he told me there is some aspect of natural law. A person doesn't like getting killed. Nobody likes being stolen from. We get this. But what's interesting, the Buddha's view in this sense is fundamentally different. He is not a creator. He's a guy who became what they call a Buddha, a perfected being. You know, using these methods that he presented, which is what Buddhist methodology is. So basically, then, when Buddha is like Jesus, he starts his entry-level junior school Buddhist practice. It sounds like what Jesus says. It sounds like what your grandmother says. Behave nicely. And Buddha would say, for example, don't kill, don't lie, don't steal, don't jump on the wrong partner, don't abuse people. I mean, these are like fundamentals of what we call good ethics or good morality. And I think if we have a good Christian, a good communist, and a good Buddhist, they'll all behave the same way. So that's an agreement there. But the crucial point I'm making here is for the Buddha, it is only natural law. So for the Buddha, if you ask him, they don't use the term sin, they would usually translate the word as a negative action. What is a negative action? That harms others. There's no concept in Buddhism of Buddha's law. He's not a creator. Now, I'm not criticizing Christianity. If any of you here have faith in God, please, I really respect that. But, you know, it's appropriate to talk about it. So the Buddha is not a creator. Therefore, he is not a punisher or a rewarder. There's no concept like that in Buddhism. So this is why, to take on board the Buddha's view in relation to this, it takes time to think it. What Buddha is saying is, what we think and what we do and what we say, every millisecond of it, basically programs our own consciousness. They use the term, the Tibetans, the Buddhists, will say everything we think, do and say, we're sowing seeds in our mind. And those seeds, as they're nourished, as we live each day, they eventually will ripen in the future. First point. So in that sense, almost in a literal sense, Buddha says by doing what we do, thinking what we think, feeling what we feel, the first recipient of that is me. And so Buddhist morality then is based on, you would want to live a good life first. You would want to live a good life. You would want to not harm others. You would want to not lie, or not steal, or not kill. Not because somebody said so. Not even yet because it harms another. Buddha says the basic thing that defines a negative action is there's one that harms another. The basic thing that defines a good action is one that benefits another. But the point that Buddha first makes is a negative. My killing, my lying, my stealing, he says, harms me. So the basis for Buddha's instructions for why not to kill at the very first stage, to begin controlling, in other words, to begin living a life of harnessing our physical and verbal energy, controlling our behaviour, at least, first step, first thing, at least back off and leave people alone. Don't harm, don't kill, don't lie, don't steal. But not because he said it, but because he's suggesting, like a wise doctor, that he has found from his own experience that if I lie, I steal, I kill, that programs me and manifests in the future as my suffering. He says negative actions cause suffering. And positive actions, virtuous actions of intentionally refraining from killing, refraining from lying, being kind to others, being generous. Again, the first recipient of the benefits of those actions is me. So initially, when you think, that sounds, when people say, well, that sounds selfish. You don't kill because you want to have good results. You give money because you want to have good results. Well, don't discount that. There's this analogy in Buddhism, as I mentioned earlier, a bird needs two wings, wisdom and compassion. So here is all the nuts and bolts of the approach to life, using Buddhist logic of morality, looking at the mind. All this is for one's own benefit first. Then on the basis of clarity and developing myself, I can now do the compassion wing, which is to help others. This is pretty reasonable, We all live in this crazy world together. So, then the very first level of practice in Buddhism, like I mentioned, it's like what your grandmother tells you, it's what Jesus would tell you, it's what any good human being would tell you. Behave nicely. We live in this world together. Don't harm others, please. And if even each of us can take that instruction seriously, for whatever reason, well, the world will be a happy place. But that's just a starting point from the Buddhist point of view. Then we have to look, if Buddha's saying don't kill, and he's not a creator, then we should ask him what his reasons are. Why should I not kill? What is it about it? So if we think, we can say, I think, as a Buddhist, your relationship with the Buddha is a bit like with your own doctor or a mentor. They advise you. They're not telling you what to do. This is a massive difference. And it's hard to hear it, because as soon as we hear anything that's called spiritual or morality, it's usually, doing what someone says. Generally speaking, So then, again, this information about Buddhism, it's not coming from revelation. It's not coming from, somebody telling. He didn't have a vision of this stuff. This wasn't revealed to him. It's not from on high. All of Buddhism, whatever Buddhism says, all the vast view about the universe and this law of karma, all this stuff, we might talk about that this time. All this is coming from Buddha's own observation. And he's absolutely not asking us to believe a single word he's telling us. Because technically, because he's not a creator, it's not technically a belief system. It's totally reasonable if you posit a superior being who is the source of the universe, who has a plan, and that's the way to be really good Christian or Muslim, then you don't question God. You do what God says. I think that's sublime. I think if a person lived their life like that, I honour that. I would never criticise that. But that's not the Buddha. I might take his advice, but it's because I've chosen to take his advice. The doctor can give me advice. I don't need to take it. She's not my creator. She, out of her kindness and her own experience, she might suggest, Robina, don't smoke. It might give you cancer. So we know when we hear that as practical. She's not saying if you smoke, I'll cause you cancer. No, she's an advisor. That's the way the relationship we have with the Buddha. Because he's a person who became this person, this enlightened being, as they call it, So the part of us that does all this, that's what Buddha calls the mind. So the Buddhism doesn't have a term like soul or spirit. For the Buddha, the word mind, as I mentioned earlier, is used synonymously in present. Maybe better. So the word they use in Buddhism is mind or consciousness. These are used synonymously. So normally, of course, when we say mind, we point to our brain. The Buddha's not discussing the brain. He might not argue that we have a brain, but he's not discussing the brain. The Buddha, a really crucial point is that our mind is this internal cognitive process, including the sensory, the conceptual, the intellectual, the emotional, the unconscious, the instinctive, intuition, this entire spectrum of our inner being. This is really what Buddha back then, based upon these Indians before him, utilising this amazing psychological skill called concentration meditation that enables a person to go to the subtlest level of their own internal process. So these are really words we don't have in our culture because we discuss the brain, you know. So Buddhism has really got a sophisticated view, yes, of the mind. Again, I'm telling you, you have to believe me, I'm just presenting. So the Buddha view, as I was saying before, the source of happiness and the source of suffering, finally, for the Buddha, is internal. And this is clearly not evident. This is not how we think at all in the modern way of seeing the world. The default view we have is, as we've been talking, happiness is something we get from out there. And suffering is also something we get from out there. And then we spend all our day, all our lives, don't we, manipulating the outside world just to make it perfect so we can get happiness. And then the second we lose those things, that's what we call suffering, pretty much. So the Buddha doesn't argue with that. Fine, please find a nice husband, find a lovely house, get a good job, put money in the bank, have delicious food, fantastic, go for it. But his simple point is that if we rely totally, which I think we tend to think we do, on getting the outside world to be nice so we can be happy, we know it's unstable. We just kind of know this. Everybody in this room, no matter how delicious that boyfriend was first, no matter how gorgeous that meal was, no matter how perfect that everything was, it fades, it changes, things change, people die, people leave us, things break. We sort of so intuitively know this, and yet it always seems to disappoint us. We always get shocked when things change, horrified when things go wrong. So what the Buddha's saying is that internally we have all these series of really deeply held misconceptions. Deeply held, so instinctive that we don't really notice them. So one of those, for example, as we mentioned before, we've got this model of the mind, these so-called neurotic, ego-based, unhappy states of mind. There are, again, many terms used for them. Anger and attachment, and jealousy and low self-esteem and anxiety and panic and depression. These things, we know them intimately. Yes, they're affected by our physical world and they're affected by external events, but the point that Buddha's making is they're literally states of mind. And those are my states of mind. Whereas we tend to think, I am angry, we know we're angry, but it is caused by that thing. We know it's an emotion, but still we know it's in our mind. We're truly believing it's the result of that happening. I am happy. We know that's a state of mind. We truly believe it's the result of this. Buddha would not disagree. He says they play a role. But his crucial point is they're merely catalysts for happiness. They're merely catalysts for suffering. So therefore the emphasis in Buddhism, not to be moralistic, not to be kind of holy or religious, as far as the Buddha is concerned, is completely practical, is to become intimately familiar with the workings of our own mind and therefore and to change them. And he would say that is the source. That is the source of happiness. So if we think just simply, you ask the person simply, why are you happy, Robina? Well, things are going well. We know that. We assume that. The weather is nice. The person is nice. The food is nice. Things are going well. Marvelous. What a bonus. So we have this assumption, that's why I'm happy. So basically, if we think about it really simply, we think of happiness when we get all the nice things, when we get, the way Buddhism would put it, when we get what attachment wants. And then, of course, what's suffering? Suffering is exactly the opposite. When we don't get what attachment wants. So then, in that sense, Buddha's saying we're like these, if we have that deeply and live according to that and never question it, then we become complete victims of the outside world. And we go up and down like yo-yos. Quite literally, we have no control over our own internal workings. And it's a struggle, it's an enormous struggle then, to remain happy when things go wrong, to not suffer when things go wrong. So all the Buddha is saying is that I keep repeating, it's like a practical issue. There's a saying in Buddhism, if you can change something, please change it. But if you can't, it's kind of like, then what? Then what? Then what? So one of these many misconceptions also is that we somehow know everything changes. They call it impermanence. There's this immense teachings in Buddhism about impermanence. I mean, he certainly didn't, he's not a creator. We all know impermanence is natural. Things change. We get old. We die. Lives, relationships change. Cups break. Tables break. Houses. What I'm saying is because we have this fierce craving and attachment to have everything nice, when things, even this alone, something as natural as things changing, this itself causes immense suffering. Why? Not because things do change. I don't suffer because my beautiful grandma's antique cup breaks. We assume we do. It breaks because we have the false assumption that it shouldn't break and that it won't break. But it's in the nature of clay to break. Even if it doesn't break, eventually it will get old. It's sort of such an obvious truth. One of the main ways Buddha says we suffer so much, and again it's coming from the mind, because we have this deep assumption it should not change. We can't bear the thought that it might change, So therefore the Buddha's emphasis, please have wonderful things outside, but don't forget the mind. Change your mind. So when the mind is stable, we've got less neurosis, less anger, less attachment, less anxiety, less jealousy, less depression. Then when things do change, when my husband leaves me for a younger version, he won't rip my heart out and take it with me. It's such a practical thing. And again I keep saying, because Buddha's not a creator, we kind of know this already. But I would just say that the whole Buddhist approach totally is this emphasis to a much more subtle degree than we can imagine. This job of working on our mind, as one of my teachers puts it, of being our own therapist. So if you think simply that the usual view we have is happiness is what we get when we get the nice thing, when we get what attachment wants. But the Buddhist view is happiness is what you get when you give up attachment and anger and resentment and anxiety and jealousy. So that you can have the best of both worlds. You can have delicious things, and if they go, you're still happy. I don't mean that in a simplistic sense. Obviously, it's more subtle and it's more nuanced than that. But the essence, the emphasis in Buddhism is on working on, becoming familiar with, and deeply changing the way we see the world. So one way of describing all these qualities, these states of mind, they're basically viewpoints. They're simply opinions, Oh, that's a lovely cup. Well, that's an opinion. He's such a kind person. It's an opinion. I hate him. He is evil. That's an opinion. So in one sense you could say what Buddha's talking about is the negative, unhappy, neurotic states of mind that we take for granted. They are opinions, but they've got no base in reality. They're completely distorted, So I'm super attached to this cup, which means I need to be there, I think it all the time, I possess it, I don't want to share it with anybody, and therefore I'm completely nervous about it breaking, because I'm imposing another lie on it, because I can't bear to think of not having it, so I imagine it's impermanent, I imagine instinctively that it won't change. I can't bear the thought of it not being there. So clearly, in our relationships, this is so fundamental. When I'm in love with somebody, believe I've found happiness, we will be together forever, I have now found happiness, everything is perfect. And it feels like that. Then the idea of this ever ending is beyond even thinking about it. It's shattering. So when he does leave me a year later for someone else or dies, the suffering is absolutely unbearable. So again, in our culture we say, oh, that's normal. We don't analyse it. We don't analyse it internally. We take it for granted, But the Buddha would say it's because of these deeply ingrained, primordial misconceptions deep in the bones of our being. So that, again, the level to which we can unpack and unravel these assumptions in Buddhism is quite subtle, actually. Not way more subtle, I would suggest, than the levels to which we can, the way we understand the mind in our culture. I would say that from my experience, okay? So, given this fundamental view that is so primordial, so obvious, that we all want happiness and don't want suffering. The ants, the dogs, the monkeys, the humans, it's pretty obvious. And all Buddha's saying is in one of these packages of his teachings, it's the first teaching Buddha gave after he did this job of accomplishing this goal. Come on in. People are there to come in. Come on in. There's a chair here. One was not. So, the first teaching Buddha gave after he became enlightened, as they call it, is in fact is called the Four Noble Truths. So if anybody's read a bit of Buddhist teachings, they'll know that phrase. It's really the presentation in the context of suffering. First one, there is suffering. The second is there are causes. The third is you can get rid of it. And the fourth is how you do it. So it's quite a practical presentation, It can be quite complex. The essence of it is Buddha's own experiential findings that suffering and its causes come from the mind and that we can rid the mind of them. That's what he's saying. This is the fundamental point, actually, of all the Buddha's teachings. The basis of all Buddhist practice, the basis of all Buddhist psychology is this, which is presented as methodology to quit, to get rid of suffering and its causes. So then the first level of suffering for the Buddha, three levels of suffering. The first level of suffering is pretty obvious, it's when the bad things happen. A husband leaves you get a broken leg, you just get a bellyache. There's levels of suffering. And I think the whole world would agree when we say the word suffering, it means when the bad things happen, pretty much, And we can see on this earth pretty intense suffering. But then the second level of suffering in Buddhism is much more nuanced. And initially, it's a shock to hear it, but it's what we refer to as happiness. It sounds a bit depressing. So if we look at the second noble truth where Buddha outlines his observation, his own experiential findings about what the causes of suffering are. Now this is, if I discuss this now, I've got to give the bigger picture, The last talk we didn't do that, but maybe I'll do that here, just to give you the ideas. Again, remember, Buddha is not a creator. He's telling you, it's not revelation. He's not making it up. Let's hope. You don't believe him, so you have to find out. It's simply from his own experience. That's what he's saying. He's observed this to be so. So the second one, the causes of suffering, as far as Buddha is concerned, there are two. So as far as we're concerned, there's one. It's you, or mummy and daddy, or the bad food, or the lousy husband, or whatever. There's one cause of suffering and it's out there. Well, the Buddha's a bit shocking. He says, no, there are two main causes of suffering, and they're both inside ourselves. Which is pretty intense to hear initially. So what are they? Well, there's two words. Karma, they call it karma, and delusions. So delusion is one of the many terms that's used in Buddhist psychology for these unhappy states of mind. And it's got a very specific and very interesting meaning. I don't know what you have in Romanian, but in English it's a very tasty word. If you're accused of being delusional, you'd be very offended because someone's suggesting that you're not in touch with reality. Well, this is absolutely what Buddha's saying. And this might not be evident to us, but once we start to look at what he's saying, we can really see what it's true. So these delusions, or these unhappy states of mind, these neuroses, these negative states of mind, these primordially deep assumptions in our mind, called attachment, anger, and the other ones. These simple words, and others as well. So the Buddha says that they're the source of all the suffering. So basically, simply speaking, taking this view of karma, which for the Buddha is a natural law. He didn't create it, he didn't invent it, he didn't make it up. He's observed it. That's what he would say. Because he's not a creator, so it's not from revelation or anything. So this idea of karma, which as I suggest, as I said to you, has been in the Asian culture for thousands of years, this observation, this philosophical view about what the universe is, where it comes from, what is a sentient being, and all these things. It's like, so they call it the law, it's this law of karma. So basically another way of saying it in a simple sense is it's the law of cause and effect. So we understand that. We know very well in our daily life, everything functions according to the law of cause and effect. We know, this biscuit, once we learn the recipe, we've understood the law of cause and effect of baking. And then every time you do it, you get a cookie. You won't be surprised. Because of the laws of botany, there's the law, you know, there's all these laws. We call that science. Well, then, of course, if you're Christian, you have the God's law, and that's a different discussion because you're not supposed to know that way. And that's okay, I'm not complaining. But there's no concept of Buddha's law. Buddha would say he's observed that this law of karma is what the universe runs in. When this law of karma plays out in sentient beings' minds and lives. So that the whole principle here then is based on Buddha's understanding of the mind. It's not physical. It is intimately related to the brain and the body, but is not itself a function of the brain. Clearly, with our models of the mind, that's a shocking concept. There's no time to go into this in too much depth, but it's all in the literature. The consciousness or mind is not physical. It goes to way more subtle levels of cognition, which is what one learns to investigate using these skillful meditation techniques, which is a long-term Buddha says we need to cultivate to accomplish what he says we can accomplish. The next thing about the mind is that it's got those more subtle levels. It's not the product of mummy or daddy. It's not the handiwork of the creator, and it's got this marvelous potential. The point of all of Buddha's teachings is the goal, the achievement of this perfection of all the virtues within us and the eradication of all the rubbish. That's the meaning of the word Buddha, actually. So then, and so the other crucial point about the Buddha, if we're not the handiwork of the creator, and we're not the handiwork of our parents, but we are the handiwork of our, they created our body, there's no doubt about that. We've got the egg and the sperm came together and produced, you know, for the Buddha that's just the body, it's not my mind. The crucial point the Buddha's making, and again this is the bigger picture point of view, is that we come programmed at the first second of conception in our mother's fallopian tube or wherever it is, with our own tendencies, our own, as they call them, karmic seeds or karmic imprints. So the idea here is that our consciousness did not begin in our mother's womb. The package called me, the combination of my body and my mind, began in the mother's womb. The body came from mummy and daddy, but the consciousness, the thoughts, the feelings, emotions, unconscious, subconscious, good tendencies, bad tendencies, good at music, bad at football, all my tendencies, they came from before. This is a fundamental thing in Buddhism. And again, as I say, it's dealt with in great depth in all the literature. We're just saying it here. So, okay, and this consciousness, think of it as like a river of mental moments. It goes back and back and back and back. And indeed, after we die, we'll go on and on and on. So the principle, the basis of morality in Buddhism, the basis of the method to get happy, the basis of the method to refrain from to stop suffering, the basis of the method to help others is all related to this, the fundamentals. Consciousness is a continuity of mental moments, goes on and on. And every millisecond of what, for example, what I've experienced in this life, in terms of my tendencies, in terms of my mind, in terms of my experiences in the hands of others, and other things too. It's quite a shocking concept, but it's not how you think, you know. It's quite a shocking concept, but it's not how you think, you know. But it's sort of, so then obviously if this is the case, and someone like me who's chosen, as I put it, to take Buddhism as my working hypothesis, that's all I can say about it. I can't see a past life. I haven't developed enough spiritual clarity to see the future, but I have to take it as my hypothesis. You've got to start somewhere. So this is a view that I'm taking on board in my life as my basis for interpreting me and therefore interpreting the world. You know, it's my job too. So then the two main causes of suffering, and indeed the two main causes of my happiness, are the same. A past action. The word karma is Sanskrit. It means literally action, a thing we do or say, but then it's obviously informed by the second cause, which is the main one, a state of mind. So broadly speaking in Buddhism, a negative action, let's say killing. Killing is an action, you kill a sentient being, but it's based upon, usually, the wish to harm. You don't go around killing people because you love them. I mean, we think that a little bit, but generally speaking, stealing, killing, raping, these obvious harmful actions, they're based on my own neuroses, my own attachment, my own rage, my own anger, my own depression, these things, obviously, you know. So the Buddha's view of me learning to become happy, then indeed to practice the compassion view, which is to help others be happy, it starts with this process, taking on board this view that my consciousness is mine, comes from before, and that every millisecond what I experience now, what I think now, what I do now, is from past seeds I've planted. It's an analogy that you use. So therefore, if everything I think and do and say is mainly caused by my own past, then clearly the conclusion from this is that I'm responsible. I'm accountable. So the initial way to hear that when it comes to suffering is, oh, you mean it's my fault? The first thing we hear is that. But the Buddhist view is not that. It actually, if we take this on board, I'm finding this, my choice, that it brings enormous sense of responsibility. So obviously if I'm convinced my mother made me, and I'm convinced that I'm angry because my father beat me, and I'm convinced that, you know, I'm happy because you're kind to me, then very obviously I'm going to spend all my time trying to get people to be kind to me based on attachment, because I believe that's the cause of my happiness. I'm going to do everything I can to avoid all the ugly things, because that's the cause of my suffering. But Buddha says, no, that's fine, but it's not going to solve the problem. He says it's in here. The source of my own happiness, the source of my own joy, the source of my own compassion, the source of my own anger and suffering is me, in me, in me. So it's really quite an intense concept. So as the Dalai Lama said one time, karma, this law of karma, is like self-creation. So quite literally you could say, Buddha is saying, we are the product of our own past. We are the main cause. In our world, we think we're the product of mummy and daddy's past. So for me, the idea of this view of karma, and to really try to learn to understand it properly how it works, it's kind of intense. But what it brings is not guilt, it's not shame, it's the opposite. It brings accountability. It brings this recognition. First, of course I want to be happy. And Buddha was saying, never think that's inferior. You've got to start yourself, then you can help others. Of course I want happiness. So then that's why, on the basis of this, he would then suggest, well good, so do you want to suffer Robina? No thank you. Well then honey, stop killing, stop lying, stop stealing, stop being unkind, stop raping, stop, you know, the very basic, first level, at least refrain from harming others. That he says, because those actions are the cause of why I suffer in the future. So we look at the present world and we see people suffer, and this is the first level of suffering. Then this sounds intense to us. It's hard to hear this initially, but it's so different from the view we tend to have. That the suffering is the fruit of those individual beings' past negative actions. And all the happiness we see, including our own, is the source of our own past virtuous actions. So keep remembering in Buddhism, there is no creator. It is not punishment and it's not reward. But that's the way we hear it. We're so used to thinking of it like that. But there's no concept in Buddhism of punishment and reward. It's like, you know, in the same way that if you're, like I said before, my doctor says don't smoke with me because you might get cancer. I'm actually grateful to her. I don't hear it as punishment. I don't say, how dare you tell me what to do? How dare you say I'll have suffering if I do this? It's not moralistic. We understand that. And then equally, when you go home and you discover your doctor's not there, you don't say, oh good, she doesn't see me, she's not here, so out come your Marlboros and you start smoking again, or I won't get cancer, she doesn't see me smoke. We'd laugh at that. But that's the same approach that Buddha has to morality. That everything I experience is first and foremost the fruit of my own past programming. So that concept then brings enormous sense of responsibility. It kind of you grow up, you stop blaming others, either for your happiness or your suffering. You know it's up to you. So it's quite a fascinating point actually. I'd like to get some questions from you about this. But that's the fundamental Buddhism. That suffering is the result of my past negative actions. So given that I don't want suffering, hey, guess what? I'm sick of suffering. The obvious solution, like I don't want cancer, obvious solution, don't sue Marlboro. That won't get you better. You don't blame Marlboro if you like, but what good it would do? It's not going to help you. You still get cancer. So how about stopping smoking? So there's no concept of blame in this idea. You know, it's very interesting. So the basis of morality in Buddhism is this one. You don't want suffering, so then stop harming others. You don't want, you know, do you like being lied to? He says, well then don't lie. Do you want to be killed or harmed? Then don't kill. Do you want to be stolen from? Then don't steal. That's his view. Not if you steal you get punished. But it's a natural consequence. The Buddhist view is that everything we think and do and say, he says it's a natural law, no one's running it, no one's pulling the strings, no one's punishing, no one's rewarding. It's literally a natural law, what it says, that occurs. That everything we think and do and say, every sentient being what they think and do and say, every ant, every monkey, every human, programs that consciousness and will produce in the future the results of those actions. That's the Buddhist view about karma. Given that my mind goes back and back, and then it will continue when I die. So the basis of this first level of practice, learn to practice morality, learn good ethics, don't kill, don't lie, don't steal. So initially what that does is then I learn to harness my physical and verbal energy. I learn not to follow every thought I have. I learn not to say every word I want, just to dump on other people because I feel like it. So it's intense. You use your discipline to do that for your own sake first. Then, gradually, as we progress, we can then it can be based on genuine compassion. But first comes first, you know. Then the next level of Buddhist practice, now that I've harnessed my body and speech, now I can do the serious work of really going deep into my mind. If I vomit out every feeling I have through my mouth, I don't have the luxury to notice what's happening in my mind, which is what's informing it. So by behaving nicely, by disciplining my body and speech, by living a good life of morality at the first level, then naturally I can now go more deeply for the Buddha to get the source of the problem, to get to the source of why I kill, the source of why I eat too much chocolate cake, the source of why I want to steal, or why I want to be whatever, is my mind, the delusions in my mind. So karma and delusions. This is what it is. Now equally, happiness. What's the cause of happiness? The same logic. My experiences of good things happening, people being kind to me, people loving me, getting a job, not being stolen from, not being lied to, you know, is not just accidental, it's not reward from anybody, it's not just random, it's actually, again, according to this law of karma, what it says, it's the fruit of my past virtue, my past goodness, my past non-lying, non-killing, non-stealing. This is Buddha's view, just simply speaking. And he says the natural law. It's not revelation. It's not running the show. It's not punishment. It's not reward. Now that concept, it takes time, I think, because we have an instinctive feeling that morality is dualistic, that it's coming from someone else. I'm a bad girl, I'm a good girl, this kind of thing, you know? So then, maybe to analyse even, what is a negative action? Why is it negative? Don't believe him. Don't believe. There's no concept of believing what Buddha says. Analyse it. Think about it. Take it on board as a hypothesis. And indeed, if you prove that Buddha is wrong, then you must reject it, as the Dalai Lama says. It's not a belief system in its nature at all. You can't prove something immediately, so you hypothesize it. That's perfectly reasonable. So then why is killing called a negative action? What is it in that action when I do it that would sow seeds in my mind that would ripen in the future as my suffering? That part's pretty abstract, but let's look at it. Well, it's not too abstract. Back in the 1960s when I was smoking 80 cigarettes a day, in between my marijuana, I didn't know much about cancer. I would have been, I didn't know that maybe 40 years later I would get cancer. I haven't got cancer, I'm fortunate. I didn't see the future consequences of my present actions. So we're talking in one life here. We even see that. Who would have thought that when you ate the nice sugar things when you were a kid, that you might get diabetes 40 years later? Even that we don't know. That's there's a delayed response. When you eat your sugar every day, you don't get diabetes then, but it takes time. Well, Buddha's view of morality is the same, except he's just talking more than one life, that's all. But the principle is the same. But what we do and say and think now produces future results. In one sense, it's not a complicated concept. We understand it in ordinary things. You plant a seed now, 40 years later, you'll get an oak tree. We know that. Buddha's saying that about morality, that's all. So then what is it, when you do the action of killing, what component of it makes it negative? Because remember, there's no judgment, there's no reward, there's no punishment. There's no one there deciding you're a naughty girl. So what is it? Let's analyse it then. Well, let's analyse a virtuous action. Let's say Christian is a homeless person, let's say. So I see him there. Then I think, oh, poor guy, he needs money. So that's it. So then I have the intention. The intention is the meaning of the word karma, the bare bones meaning of the word karma. Everything we do starts with a thought. You might notice it because we're so programmed, but it starts with the intention, I will. So the thought arises, I will give him some money. Then what's the basis of it? What's the reason for it? The motivation. as the Buddhists would say? Well, obviously it's compassion. So then I do the action, get the money out, give him the money, and he receives the money. Well, that's an action of generosity. So the component that when I do it, that makes it virtuous and sows virtuous seeds in my mind, is not even the giving of the money. Is not the thought, I will give money, is not even the giving of the money, is not even him receiving the money. The crucial piece is my motivation, my compassion, my wish to help somebody. That's what makes it virtuous. It's not virtuous because someone said so. And we can see what a virtuous action is one that's connected to others. It's related to empathy and interdependence and connectedness. My heart reaching out to another. Not doing a good thing because someone said. It's like a natural thing. So now let's just think of another action of giving Christian money, but let's look at it differently. Let's say he's rich, he's my friend, and I really want his money. So I'll act like I'm a really nice girl, and then he needs some money for the taxi. Oh, I'll give you money, sweetheart. Here's my 20 euros, you know. Now, it looks like the same action, doesn't it? There's a person there. I have the intention, I will give him money, I give him the money, and he receives the money and he says thank you. It looks completely identical to the previous action, but the one component has changed, my motivation. Before it was genuine and empathetic and kind and compassionate, virtuous. So the second action is not virtuous. I'm manipulating him. I'm pretending to be kind to him because I want him to give me his money. That's not virtuous. That's negative. That's neurotic. That's completely I-based. That's self-centered. That's attachment. That's a lie. That's a negative action. Now he gets his money. He's happy. But I create a negative action because my motivation was bad. And that's where in the Buddhist view, because no one's judging us about what's good or bad, we have to be the arbiters of what's good or bad based on this principle of what virtue means and non-virtue, but it's a natural law. Virtuous is generally a thought, a feeling in here that's connected to others, the wish to help, the wish to be kind, the wish not to harm. That in its nature is virtue. That's not religion, that's common sense. So here I'm talking about doing an action of giving money, which looks virtuous, but it's not in its nature, for me, virtuous, because my motivation was really manipulative. So it's kind of schizophrenic. And we see this a lot, we can imagine this. So that's why the Buddha's view is, you know, you've got to know your own mind, because you're the boss of this. He gives his outline, so that means we have to have enormous integrity and know our mind well. You can't cheat yourself. There's no benefit. I can pretend I meant well, but it wasn't meant well. It was a polluted, deluded misconception. So I programmed myself with that misconception. You know, it's my own doing, you know. That's why the Buddha's view is we have to learn to know our minds really deeply, because we're in charge of the process. It's like if you don't know nutrition, you can't rely on people telling you every day what's good food. You better learn it yourself, because you're going to get the consequences, honey. It's not morality. You're going to get diabetes and cancer if you don't know what you should or shouldn't eat. It's common sense. You're in charge. Same with morality and happiness, Buddha says. And same with negativity and immorality or bad ethics and by suffering. It's a natural law. So it's just the same as a so-called negative action. So in general terms, Buddha starts with saying a positive action is one that benefits another. A negative action is one that harms another. So I just gave one example then of giving. So giving is a positive action in general, but by looking at the different motivation, the first one was in fact a virtuous action when I did it and I created virtue in my mind. So the seed of virtue. I programmed myself with the habit to be generous and compassionate. That's what practice is. The other second action, still in general a positive action. He gets the money, he's happy, but I didn't create virtue. I created non-virtue. My mind was neurotic, my mind was deluded, my mind was manipulative. That's exactly the same with what is called a negative action. So Buddha would say a negative action is one that harms another. Well, stealing harms another, pretty clear. Killing harms another. It's not rocket science, you know, it's a natural law. They harm others. So let's look at an action, let's say, you know, Buddha would suggest we don't kill anything, not just humans, but the Buddha would suggest mice want to be happy, dogs want to be happy, and insects want to be happy, so honey, don't kill any of them. Which is pretty intense for us, because we look at our world, most people kill something, most humans kill something, and with respect to my Catholic upbringing, and I have great respect for it, really, I was taught that God made other creatures for humans' benefit, so it's totally appropriate to kill. That's an interesting view. Buddha says no, best not, don't harm any being, nobody wants to suffer. It was kind of intense. It's hard to not kill every cockroach and not kill every ant. If you develop that view, it's kind of powerful. So okay, the same then, a negative action will be called killing. That mouse in my kitchen, let's say. So then there's the mouse. I have the intention. I will kill that mouse. Motivation or reason. I can't stand mice. How dare that mouse be in my kitchen? Disgusting mouse. That's called aversion or even anger. Aversion, disgust. That's not a positive state of mind. That's a neurotic, I-based, ego-based, constrict. The negative states of mind for the Buddha are kind of constricted. They're I-based, they're fear-based, they're neurotic. They are themselves the source of pain. The very having of anger causes me pain, not to mention the long-term result. The very having of jealousy causes me unbelievable pain, not to mention the actions I do on the basis of it. So here, the reason, the motivation, the reason I want to kill the mouse is I can't stand mice. It's not for the mouse's sake, it's for my sake completely. It's aversion, it's anger. That's called a negative state of mind. Then I do the action. I kill the mouse and I kill the pig. That's an action of killing. In general, killing is a negative action because it's harm another. But specifically when I do it here, that means I create a negative karma because I put a negative seed in my mind. And that will program and continue. Unless I pull it out, it will naturally bring its own results, Buddha says. And this is long term now. This karma ripens. They use the analogy of seeds and fruits in 4 ways. It will ripen as a suffering type of rebirth for me. It will ripen as my tendency to keep killing. It will ripen as an experience of being killed myself and other things like this. This is Buddha's view. It sounds pretty cosmic, but Buddha's view. And it's all dealt with in this literature and depth, explained, you know. And it's coming from his observation. So obviously, okay, that's a typical action of killing. But let's look at, just in reverse, let's look at how another example of killing. Let's say Christian has a mouse in his kitchen. He sees the mouse. He goes, oh my God, that poor mouse, look at the suffering. There's compassion. He sees the mouse is suffering. So the usual way we think in our modern world is that if you kill the mouse, it'll stop its suffering, because that's what we think. Well, the Buddha's view would be that the mouse's consciousness will continue. Okay? So then, but he will be like, you know, a regular person who will think, oh my God, the poor mouse is suffering. I don't want it to suffer. I must kill it. So he does exactly the same. The analogy of a generous action. In general, killing a mouse is illegal. 1, the mouse is there. 2, I will kill the mouse, he thinks. 3, reason, compassion. He wants to help the mouse. His wish is to help the mouse. 3, he kills the mouse. The dead mouse. Now, it looks on the surface as exactly the same as my action. The one piece that's different is his motivation, is his reason. So you could argue he doesn't create much negative karma because he meant well. He wanted to help the mouse. Now, the next question should be, of course, which we don't ask, I wonder if I did help the mouse. Well, the Buddha's answer would be, you're not sure, because that little mouse's consciousness will continue after you kill it and will take another rebirth. That's Buddha's view. And so if you're not certain that it'll take a really nice rebirth, meet, you know, become a human being, get a spiritual path, meet the Dalai Lama, and have a happy life, then you're playing Russian roulette with the mouse. And with your grandma. I mean, there's so much conversation these days, isn't there, about killing our grandma because, you know, euthanasia and these things. It's an interesting topic, you know. The Buddha's view is fundamental. All consciousness of any person, whether your grandma or a mouse, when it dies, when we die, our consciousness will continue and have another life. So the view of morality then, in the Buddhist view, entry level, grade 1. You know, if you decide to use Buddha's instructions, before you get anywhere near meditating, before you get anywhere near looking at your mind, that's more advanced. At least harness the energy of your body and speech. And for whose benefit? First, your own. So do I want suffering and be killed in the future? No, so I better not kill. Do I want to be lied to, hurt in the future? No, I don't. So don't lie, don't steal. That's the basis of Buddha's morality. Because whenever you do, it will bring its own results inside you. That's the basic idea. And then you can go further, he says, and deal with the main cause of suffering, which is the delusions, the neuroses, the attachment, the anger, and all the other rubbish that inform the actions I do with my body and speech. So it's exactly the same as happiness. that the law is the same logic. Whatever I do, motivated by virtuous thoughts, is what ripens in the future as in my happiness. Do I want happiness? Yes. So then, not only not harm, but help others. Be generous, be loving, be kind. This is still only for my sake. This is a wisdom week. Now, obviously, as I progress on this, and I get less neurotic, and I harness my energy, and I change my mind, and become less attacked and less angry, I will become more joyful, more content, more fulfilled, and then now I'm more clear, and I see the world, and I realise we're all in the same boat, causing our own suffering, harming others, blaming everybody else, going crazy, and then you get more and more compassion for others. Then you're more capable of being of help to others, compassion, and that grows to an incredible degree. And can, Buddha says. But it's one step at a time. First, it's like having compassion for yourself. Put yourself together, then you're capable of helping others, you know?
So after all, it's based on punishment.
What's the enough?
Sorry, I hope I don't interrupt.
No, this is perfect. I would like to have questions now. I didn't know what I was going to talk about here, so I hear me talking about karma, which is interesting, and whatever. It's a very interesting Buddhist view. So what's the question? Tell me. Yes.
So the whole karma system is still based on punishment and reward.
Okay, so good. I hear your point. Let's analyse those words, shall we? I understand your point exactly. So punishment. Doesn't that say there is a person who punishes? Wouldn't that suggest that? Oh, so stop. So you think, so if you get cancer, that's a really perfect question, but I want to analyse the words. So if you eat too much cake and get a bellyache, I don't think you would say, oh my God, I'm so guilty, I just got punished for eating too much cake. I don't think you'd say that. I don't think if you got cancer because you smoked too many cigarettes that you would think of it as punishment. I'm not sure, but I don't think you would. Why don't you tell me what you think of that example? Tell me.
I believe it's the way you see the world.
What does it?
The way you see the world and yourself, very much so. But
No, just answer that question quite precisely. We understand, okay, let me ask again. Do you have consequences for ourselves? Do you accept that? Do you accept that? But we do not call that punishment and reward, do we? We call it natural law, that if you do a dumb thing, you might suffer as a result. We never think of it as punishment and reward. I think you would agree with me.
Well,
I'm not trying to be tricky now. Please tell me sincerely your answer. I'm asking you that question.
Yes.
No, not but. Tell me that question. Would you see that as punishment and reward?
Yes.
I'm curious.
Karma, yes.
No, I didn't ask. I didn't say the word karma. I didn't say that. I'm asking you in daily life, in the world, do we go to the doctor and she says, please eat well. What's your name? What's your name? Claudia. Eat well. So you take her advice, wouldn't you? You'd be very happy for her advice.
Yes.
You wouldn't think that if you got sick, it's punishment, would you?
No.
Because there's no one punishing you, is there? You know it's a consequence. So you eat well, you get the consequence of having good health, and you're very happy with that. You don't think of that as a reward. And if you get sick, you don't think of it as punishment. Are we communicating, people? I think you would agree with that. So then yet, as soon as we hear, that's my point, this other one I said, because I think the reason you say it's the same and it's punishment and reward, because in our mind, that's the philosophical view we have about what's called morality. We have a very scary view about that I'm bad, I'm good. That's very dualistic. So I think Buddha's view is the same as the other one. If you might take, you're going to get a bellyache. Kill, you're going to suffer. It's the same logic. It's not punishment, it's not reward, but there's no one punishing you and there's no one rewarding you. You do it to yourself. That's the point, and that's what takes us time to hear. I'm not suggesting you have to hear it, you don't have to agree, but I'm trying to explain it, trying to get it down to earth, you know?
I understand, but in the large scheme of things,
What now?
in the large scheme of things,
The large scheme of
in the
things.
large scheme of
Yes.
things, we have a life, and we can experiment and by trial and error.
What, darling?
By trial and
That's up to,
error.
no, you can try trial and error if you like, but that's not the discussion here. What's your point here? Of course you can do trial and error, but I mean, Do you do trial and error when you think, oh, I'll eat cyanide to see if it causes me suffering, because the doctor says it will? I don't think you want to do trial and error there. I think you take the advice of your doctor. So come on, what are you talking about? Trial and error. What's that mean?
Well, a way of learning.
Huh?
A way of learning.
A way of learning what?
About yourself and about life.
Well, why not go to somebody who's got good advice? You know, if you want to, would you learn to be a doctor by trial and error? No, you wouldn't waste your life. You wouldn't really get the wheel. You'd find a person who's done that job, you would appreciate their hard work, and then because they've learned that, you'll ask them to show you how you can be a doctor using all their hard work and science of the last few centuries. I don't think you just do trial and error. That's really very arrogant, very silly.
Well,
Buddha's
example is just that. You know,
just what?
Follow yourself journey.
Who told you that?
Well,
I've never heard that in 41 years and being a Buddhist, so I don't know where the teachings you got are. So maybe we're reading different books, darling.
no, but I mean, we have different systems of cognition. As human beings, we have different systems of cognition, and if we talk about this level of entry level of the mind at large, yeah, we have to specify that.
Have to what?
We have to specify then that we have different systems of understanding.
Who does? Who?
Awareness. We ourselves as
Who's we?
Human beings.
What are you saying? I'm lost. You're really losing me, darling. Understand?
I'm sorry.
What's the point you're making? Get to the point, will you? What's the one point you're trying to tell me? I'm happy to hear, but I can't. What's the essential point you're making? Please tell me.
That we have different systems of cognition.
We have different what?
We have several systems of cognition.
Oh, hundreds, thousands. But then in the end, you choose the one that you like to follow, don't you? If you want to study music, you choose that. Well, I'm talking Buddha's cognition here. I'm talking Buddha's music.
That's quite mystic.
I beg your pardon?
It's quite mystical. I mean, it's quite
What?
large. The Buddha awareness and consciousness is quite large.
So what are you telling me? You keep adding another point.
I'm not making a point.
Well, then stop talking. You had your question. Pass the microphone.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. No, you haven't. Now pass the microphone. I am very rude, I know. But that's, I'm not trying to be rude. I'm trying to be here. Thank you very much. Who would like to debate with me now? You see, try and think, pretend that I'm talking about cooking in this room. So obviously, if I'm talking about cooking, you'd hope I'd have some recipes and have a little bit of knowledge, otherwise I'd be very good dessert to sit up here. So I'm talking from a particular set of methods of cooking here. I'm talking a particular view about the universe coming from Buddha, based upon the teachings I received from the teachers going back to the time of the Buddha. So it's a very specific way of presenting the world. You can have another view, everybody can have another view. Of course you can, but here we're discussing Buddha's view. You see my point?
Yeah, could you see my point?
Which is, I don't know, I didn't get it. I never got your point once.
I'm trying to understand what you're talking about and about Buddha consciousness.
Well, then just put your vote, then the way to do that is put your views away and listen to this one. You don't have to like it.
I do.
Well, it's not your question, then good. So the first one.
I just had a question.
What, darling?
I just had a question.
The first one. And I answered it. So I need you to think about that and see if you can understand the meaning. Because all I'm presenting is what Buddha says. He might be a peanut, he might be talking rubbish. So see if you can get the meaning. Yes, my dear. What's the question?
Let's see if it's working. Okay, so my first question is, we know what is Dharma, but what is...
What, darling? What?
We know what karma is.
I don't know.
But
you
what...
said you know Dharma.
I mean, you explained it and it was...
That's what I said. Okay, go on.
It was so clear.
Yeah.
My question is, what is Dharma?
This is what I've been talking about. It's a term they use in Buddhism for the Buddhists use about the world. That's all. It's a term they use for Buddhist philosophical and psychological teachings.
Okay, and my second question, from the Buddhist point of view,
yes.
What's the relation of you as a Buddhist monk with the hedonist?
The what?
With the hedonist.
With who? What did you say? Okay. I started buying people speaking English. Forgive me, but I don't speak. What's he saying?
I said hedonist.
What's the word?
Hedonist.
Hedonism. So
yeah.
that's fine for me. Keep the microphone. Keep the microphone. Please define hedonism for me. Tell me exactly what you think it is, then I can answer. I don't want to assume we're talking about the same thing.
Honest.
Go on.
I hope it's working. Okay, so from my point of view, because I'm still thinking and concentrating on what's happiness for me.
Yes, of course, yes.
And
What is it?
how I can deal with it. So for me, hedonism is the universal pleasure of things or for actions.
Okay, good. So hedonism is getting pleasure. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
In other words, pleasure, having happy feelings. Happy feelings. Oh, that's the Buddha's goal. Get so many happy feelings you won't believe it. So the key question is, if the Buddha's saying that we all want happy feelings, another word for pleasant feelings, another word for pleasure, another word for joy, another word for bliss, another word for ecstasy, they're all variations of what Buddha would refer to as what we call happiness. He said we all want happiness. We all don't want suffering. So happiness is referring to happy feelings. So he says, go for it, lady. And then he says, well, I'm telling you, I think your methods for getting happy feelings. What are you doing? What are you talking about?
The microphone is there.
The
microphone is there.
Keep it there. So Buddha's point is that we all want, that's his point. Look at me. Look at me. I'm trying to ask you. Happy feeling is happiness. He says he's noticed everybody wants it. And he says, well, I'll tell you what, folks, I think your methods are a bit ridiculous. They end up giving you more suffering. And that's the entirety of Buddhism, is his presentation of how we've got faulty methods. He's not being moralistic, but we follow attachment, we follow anger, we follow jealousy, we follow depression, we follow our feelings, we do what he says, you know. You experiment, you kill yourself, I'm joking, darling. So he says the methods that we think bring happiness, which is to get what attachment wants every moment, he says that method does trigger pleasant feelings, but they're only temporary, and after you've eaten 4 pieces of the cake, the pleasant feelings turn into vomiting. So then the methods we use to get happy, he says, and this is really pointing to the second level of suffering, which is what we call happiness, which is getting what attachment wants. So that's why in Buddhist psychology, he goes to incredible depth in analysing and unpacking this. That attachment is this neurotic, like a junkie in us, that's primordially deep, that runs the universe, runs every living being, deep inside us. There's this hungry little being in there, an emotional hunger that is never satisfied, always wants something more. So then we assume that when I get the sense object, the handsome boy or the cake, then I'll get happiness. Well, he says you do, but it's only a moment. And before you know it, you're vomiting. And the next day you forget and you try the cake again to try and get more happy feelings. And so that's what we keep doing. And he says not only does the happiness we get from craving, following attachment not bring happiness, stable joy, stable pleasure, it even increases the craving to get the cake again. So that's simply what the Buddha is saying is the problem with attachment. But that's really depth, that's really, it's so dense, you know, we've got to look at that deeply. So he says, hey guys, I've got a method for you. You just turn it off, please, before you put it back in. Thank you. Turn it off.
I did.
Good, well done. So he says, I've got methods for you, honey. How to get happy feelings all the time. This is a really simple way of putting what Buddha is saying. So it sounds also kind of holy and miserable and control your body and control your speech. And you understand, it sounds like boring. It sounds the opposite. It is the opposite of hedonism, what you're saying. Because all he's saying is not moralistic, not punishment, not reward. If you follow attachment and craving and then anger and resentment, which comes when attachment doesn't get what it wants, you're causing yourself a nightmare. And then you harm others, you steal and lie and rape, and then, you know, all these things. As a result of following these things, they're the consequence of it. And this can only bring you suffering now, utter misery, and even more suffering in the future. So he says the method for getting happy in the long term, all the time, is to give up attachment, to give up the neuroses. So in the beginning, it's intense, it looks like misery. Do you understand my point? So that's what he's saying, and this is the method. He says, okay, then in the literature, there's intense, detailed descriptions of the true nature of our own mind. And they talk about the very blissful terms, that our consciousness innately is pure, and it's innately blissful, it's innately joyful, it's innately compassionate. So the Buddha's method to get bliss and joy and compassion and all these things as a bonus is to give up attachment, give up anger, to give up neurosis, to give up ego. That's the hard work. But the goal is to get such happiness you wouldn't believe. If you just even read your mind would be like, even just temporarily, if you develop some skill in what they call single-pointed concentration. This extraordinary skill the Indians invented thousands of years ago that enables you to go to more subtle levels of your mind, where even temporarily, when you've got that serious focus, you've gone beyond the conceptual, beyond the neurotic, beyond the sensory. Then you experience the subtle level of your mind, even temporarily. They say literally, it is ecstatic, it is completely blissful, naturally. The nature of our mind is naturally blissful, what it says. Hear those words. It's not some kind of reward if you're a good boy. And it's not temporary. It's the way our mind is when it's unencumbered by all the junk. That's the essence of practice. That's food for thought.
Sorry?
That's food for thought, for you.
Thank you very much.
So Buddha's not saying you're not allowed to have cake, you're not allowed to have sex. Because even, honey, as you progress spiritually and you get rid of lots of attachment, your tongue doesn't drop out of your face. You're going to enjoy cake even more. That's the irony. We all know that. If you're really hungry one day, you shove the food in, you go, oh, did I eat that piece of bread? You don't even remember. Because attachment to the Buddha is like this kind of drives us, craving, when we're really craving. We know it. And you go out of your brain. When you've given up attachment, you actually have more joy. If you're my boyfriend, I'm quite blunt here, so excuse me, I don't know if you're Romanian is a very polite or not. But if you're my boyfriend and we live together, and I'm working on my mind, I'm getting less attached, less neurotic, less jealous, our sex will be so much better. It's like you don't give up sex and become boring. On the contrary, you have more joy because I've got more compassion and more empathy and less craving like a vampire, you know? Are we communicating here?
Yeah.
Why not? It takes time. It's just a long term, so it's pretty intense, you know. So in other words, even as you progress, less attached, less neurotic, less jealous, more happy. Guaranteed, that's logic. More attached, more jealous, more misery. Okay? Who else would like to answer?
How do you give up attachment?
How do you what, darling?
How do you give
What's
up?
the entire job I'm trying to describe in 1 minute here, talking very fast? All the teachings I've given is Buddha's view, presenting the problem. So clearly the solution is implied by identifying the problem. So you start controlling your body and speech. Don't jump on every boy or girl you feel like. Don't put every piece of pound cake in your mouth. That's the first level. You don't follow attachment's needs. Give her, I'm having a conversation. Give her back. So the first thing is you can't hear it, it sounds too boring. Behave nicely. Don't kill, don't lie, don't steal, don't rape. But what it means is don't follow, I like to call our body and speak like the servants of our mind. So if we're really craving for something, it's not enough to crave it, you've got to get the hand put in the mouth, don't you? Don't you? So then you're increasing craving, aren't you? If you keep putting the cigarettes in, you're increasing the craving for fags, aren't you? Would you agree? So the way to give up attachment to cigarettes is first you stop putting the cigarette in the mouth. It's still painful, and then eventually you can give up the attachment to the cigarettes. But you've got to start putting the object in first. You get my point? It's like a logical progress. And then that's where meditation comes in, knowing your mind well, and practicing. It takes time.
How do you give up attachment to a person?
What, darling?
How do you give up
Well,
attachment
that's difficult, isn't it? If there's a lot, okay. If the relationship with that person comes along with love and affection and kindness, then at least it's reasonable. But if there's only attachment, you fight every day and try to kill each other, then it's better to give them up. Because you can kill each other and you go mad. So if there's naturally attachment there, join the universe, and this goes really deep, what it says. So we've got to be humble and careful with ourselves. So then one way, if you're in a relationship and there's some reasonable relationship there's some kindness and some compassion, is there in this relationship? Okay. Listen, we've got negative qualities and we have positive ones. So if I'm having a relation with my boyfriend, and I've got masses of craving and attachment. Well, if I don't have much love, and I don't have much kindness, and I don't have much patience, and I don't have much generosity, it'll be a nightmare relationship. It'll be hell, because I'll be like a vampire, wanting to look at me every day, touch me every day, say nice words every day. The second he doesn't look at me perfect, I'll never break down. That's only attachment. We go mad. You see what I'm saying? It's enormous emotional neediness that is saying, I'm nothing, and he has to love me perfectly. But it's a bottomless pit. It means I'm this miserable, unhappy, craving person. We understand this. But if I've got some love and kindness, that makes it a little bit reasonable. So in that context, the way for me to give up attachment in a certain moment is if he doesn't look at me perfectly, exactly what I want him to be. Instead of having a panic attack, oh my God, he doesn't love me anymore. Then shut up and work on your mind. He really does love you. It's okay. He doesn't have to look at you perfectly all the time. Then you give up attachment that minute. Like stopping having a third piece of cake. So you're working on your mind all the time. You're being your own therapist. It's like cognitive therapy. You've got to be aware of your thoughts. But it's not about moment, second by second. It's not magic, you know. Are you with me? A little bit. You sure? Good enough. But the other approach is, one approach to giving up attachment is you work in, you argue with yourself, but then a simple way would be, if he says something, if he says, let's go to that movie, but you want this other movie. Well, giving up attachment is, of course, darling, I'll go to your movie. That's giving up attachment right there, doing what he wants. So being loving, being forgiving, doing what the other person wants, that can be giving up attachment. But then that gets tricky too. Is that you have a kind of like, attached, we're all very attached to being seen as a good girl. So if that's your particular attachment, you'll always agree to his movie, but you'll keep suppressing your wishes. That's not giving up attachment. That's just being more attached because you want him to love you for being a nice girl. That's real tricky going. So to stand up for your own self sometimes is very wise. No, I want to go to this movie, darling. Thank you very much. That's great. So you've got to know your own mind. So it depends, it's a very nuanced view. It's quite intricate. Do you understand? Who else?
Can I ask you something?
Oh, where are you? Yes, of course you can. Go on.
You talked about attachment.
It's not the word we use in our culture. Buddha is referring to this dreadful neurotic junkie inside us. Okay, he said attachment.
And you said we have to look within ourselves.
Well, yeah, that's the job of the Buddhist.
I wanted to ask, how can we stop suffering, seeing the pain of others?
Okay, good, thank you. This is really helpful. This is a good question. That's called compassion, isn't it? That's called compassion, isn't it? You see other people suffering and your heart breaks, yeah? It's a really good question, darling. Okay. 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 Let us use a simple example, and let's say I've got an alcoholic brother. Let's just say, right? And I love the virtue states of mine are called love. Love is the wish that my brother be happy. It's a delight in someone else's happiness. That's love. It's connected to others, you know. And we know that feeling. It's a joy when you see other one happy. You're happy for them. No strings attached. Nothing to do with whether you're happy. That's real love. Real compassion is, oh my God, look at the suffering. Look at the suffering, you know. It's awful. You see their suffering, you feel it. They're good qualities. We need to develop those. They're unbelievably important. But the trouble is this. If, let's say, I'm not looking at my own mind, I don't notice I've got attachment, I don't notice I've got fears and jealousy. Do you understand, darling? Let's say I don't notice that, but I have, let's say I've got lots of compassion, then it's going to be like this. I'll see my alcoholic brother, I'll worry about it, I'll talk to mummy about it, and I'll criticize it, but I'm worried all the time. And then what happens is, because of that, so compassion, okay, compassion is the wish you get better. Compassion, I will try to help him, I'll give him advice. But then attachment, which I don't notice, is this neediness in me that only wants the nice things. Attachment is like this junkie that can't bear to see anything bad. Are you hearing me? So my compassion wants him to be happy, it doesn't want him to suffer. But my attachment, my own, and I don't notice it, is all upset and stressed and worried and gets angry, and he hurts my mother, then I get upset for him, and I'm trying to make, and attachment is this junkie that's trying to make everything nice, because he can't stand problems. So that means I'll stick my nose in, I'll bully him, then he doesn't do it, I'll get angry, I'll talk about him behind his back. It's attachment and aversion that causes me suffering. Compassion can never cause suffering, but they mix together and you can't tell the difference. Are you seeing what I'm saying? It's quite subtle. So what happens also is this. Let's say you're like a very patient person to me. You don't have much anger, do you? You don't, do you? You're not angry with people much with your mouth, are you? That's right, I didn't think so. You're very patient, okay. So but you see, Buddha says you look more deeply into your mind, you're going to see you've got lots of attachment, which wants everything to be nice, and then when it doesn't get nice, you'll get stressed and have aversion and won't want to look at it, you'll put it away. Your style of person makes it go away. That's why when you see them suffer in the world, you can't bear looking at it. It's too painful, right? That's not because of your compassion, it's because of your attachment. But you see what I'm saying? Then yours could turn into, your aversion when you see the suffering turns into distress, you don't know what to do, or you get very depressed. Now, my type of aversion is different, you can tell. When things don't go the way my attachment likes, I get angry. Do you understand? So we've all got attachment, what it says, and it's a junkie that wants what it wants every second. It only wants the nice things. It only wants what I want. But then the millisecond our attachment doesn't get what it wants, we see the unwilling brother, we read about their news, we see the dog suffering. You understand? The attachment in this gets very upset. And then aversion arises. In your case, it goes in. Mine will go out. I'll start shouting and criticising. That's why I was a political activist. You understand? So that it's easy to see with mine that my attachment, when it doesn't get what it wants, it turns into anger. But it's much harder in a person like you to notice it internally. This aversion, when your attachment doesn't get what it wants. And we're talking real subtle here. Like, you understand me? So that the job for all of us, the more we give up attachment, the more courageous we become, because then we can confront and see the suffering. And if you have a view of karma, you know why they're suffering, and your heart breaks for them, and then it increases your wish to never give up becoming a person to help others. You get this courage to help others. And it does freak you out when you see it, but because you have a view, in this case a view of karma, you know why there's suffering, then you never give up helping the ant, the dog, your brother, and you have wisdom. So you don't keep bashing at your brother. You love him for who he is. You let him alone. You love him. You respect him. You don't keep thinking of him as an alcoholic, which is neurotic. And if he doesn't change, your heart breaks, but you're kind and respectful to him. And you meet people who are suffering. You can't make it go away, but you can help one person at a time. And then when you don't go nuts yourself, you stay stable and strong. Do you understand my point? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Who else? Yeah.
I was wondering,
if the battery's working.
Yeah, well, if happiness is so innate, like you say, so innate, like within us.
It's the natural state of our mind when it's unencumbered by the rubbish.
Exactly.
It's there.
How come, or where does all the rubbish come from? Why is it in us already? Why do we have to learn to be purely happy? And why is it so in us?
I understand, Dog, I understand. So this is, again, the Buddhist observation. It's always been, he says this is natural law. He's not, like I keep saying, he's not a creator. That means he hasn't sort of invented this. He didn't start, he doesn't create anybody. Like in the Christian teaching, roughly speaking, they say that God made us in his own likeness, and then we made mistakes, so that that's called sin, and then we have to sort of come back to God, you understand, by practicing. I'm not complaining about that, but that isn't the Buddhist view. The Buddhist view is that it sounds pretty cosmic. Your consciousness, my consciousness, everybody's consciousness, it has always existed. And because delusions, if they're here now, they've always existed. But what he has done is go deep into his mind, he says, and has found that they are not at the core of our being. He's found that from his own experience. Don't believe it, I'm just telling you. So when you study Buddhism, you learn to look into the logic of this. He has found that delusions are not at the core of our being, and they can be removed. And that the fundamental nature of mind, no one made it this way, it didn't become this way, it just is that way. That's what they mean by natural law. You know, it's just natural law, it's just how it is, they say. That's the Buddhist way of saying it. It might not be satisfying. It's just how it is. And he would say he's observed this to be so. And then we can all do the job of doing it. Ridding the mind of all the rubbish, and therefore tasting our own pure nature, which is already there, kind of latent. Do you understand? It's hard work. It's like, I like the analogy of water. We all know that water is H2O. Okay, it's got other minerals, I know that. But it's basically 2 bits of H and 1 bit of O. That's water. It's natural. So it's sort of like asking, why is water got H2O? Well, it's how it is. So we also know it can be polluted, don't we? And if you drank that glass of polluted water, you could die. But as long as there's H2O in that glass, there's always purity, isn't there? You've got to remove the pollution. That's the analogy. That's Buddha's findings. That's his way of saying it. I don't know if that helps. All right, darling. Thank you. Who else? Who else? Yes, Lily.
I have a question. So, for example, if we have like one of these negative states of mind, like example of like
join the universe,
jealousy or something like that. how do, like, I'm aware of it and I know, okay, this is my thing, I'm jealous of whoever she looks better.
That's right, exactly.
How do I work on it? What do I do to get rid of
I know. So the thing is, because you see, the thing is, the ideas I'm describing in a sense seem quite practical, and we can understand them intellectually. But when we realise, the way Buddha's saying is these habits are primordially deep, they're completely spontaneous. We know this. I mean, we don't sit there and think, oh, I think I'll be jealous today, or maybe I won't be jealous. And what a joke. It just comes from nowhere and it overrides us as if it's the depth of our beings. Attachment is saying, this deep neediness in us is so primordial. It's easy to talk about it, but the Buddha's saying it's so deep. So we've got to have real patience and kindness towards ourselves. But the first step is at least thinking, well, that's interesting. He says I can change it. Well, that sounds pretty promising. But don't hold your breath on it, because it takes time. So one of the approaches, whether it's attachment, you see, okay, hang on a second, I want to go back here for a second. It's the same idea, okay? So if, you see, the interesting point about attachment, which is the source of jealousy, and I'll explain it. If I've got a beloved boyfriend, and I've got massive attachment for him, but he always fulfills my attachment needs, he adores me and loves me, you understand what I'm saying? Then I will always say I'm happy. But it's the second he doesn't do what I want, that's when the panic starts. So then when the relationships go bad, you didn't know there was no suffering, you didn't know there was suffering before, but when things start to change, he doesn't love me so much, he doesn't look at me so nicely, he's a bit mean to me, he stays out too late because he's attaching to something that's changed, or he's becoming unkind, that's when the nightmare starts. So the thing is, the attachment was always there. When attachment gets what it wants, that's what we call happiness. And as soon as we don't get what attachment wants, that's the nightmare. So when you're working on your attachment, which is very intense, hard work, when he doesn't, because you're not so needy for him to love you every minute and do everything nice and do everything perfect, you're not so reliant upon it. What that means is you become more your own person, more literally fulfilled within ourselves. So we can say that attachment, which is the basis for Buddha in day-to-day life, it's just like this motor running us. It's this constant feeling of never being enough, a constant deep instinctive feeling of never having enough, never being enough. That's why we hanker after the cake, hanker after the boyfriend, especially because the deepest attachment of all, the most primordial attachment, is at the level of the most deep assumption that somehow I'm nobody unless I have somebody. And this is the deepest one. We can survive without, some of us don't unattached to food, some unattached to music, some unattached to clothes. We are all craving to be seen in a good light. Not just a boyfriend, but everybody. And when we're not, that's the nightmare, because that's the deepest attachment, which is rooted to the deepest sense we have in misconception, Buddha says, of our own unhappy self. But he says we've got this marvelous potential, so the job is a deeper root. And that's the job that takes time, but slowly and slowly. The first step is to be aware of it. So then if you've got attachment, that's the basis. Then the second he doesn't get what he wants, like I'm talking here, then aversion arises. So aversion is the bare bones state of mind that is the instantaneous response when attachment doesn't get what it wants. Now this is 1,000 times a day. It's not just when the boyfriend doesn't look at you, that's the big one. Or when when 1,000 times a day, something will go wrong. You'll drop the dish while you're washing the dishes. The light will be red. The sound next door is too loud. And we get upset. We get irritated. We get frustrated. We get annoyed. They are polite words for anger, but they're mild anger. And the trouble is we don't notice them until we're so anxious, or depression is the internalized version. So like I'm saying here behind. Aversion arises when attachment doesn't get what it wants. The little tiny baby ones throughout the day, and we don't notice them. I mean, you don't go to your therapist because you've got the cup. You get to my point. We just know it's silly. But it's a moment of aversion, and that builds up. Everything builds up, builds up, builds up. And then one day, when the boyfriend does something mean, then the aversion rises like a sleeping lion, and you go crazy, That's when we notice it. But we should notice it every single second. The Buddha is saying we have to develop this really subtle awareness of what is happening in our mind every day. That takes time. But our trouble is we're mostly noticing the boyfriend and the things and the people and everything out there. We hardly pay attention to what's happening in here. And that's the job. That's the job to be done. It's full on, it's intense, and it's slowly, gradually. So the result of getting less needy is more fulfilled. The result of getting less attachment is more content in ourselves. Like we like to say, become your own person. That's giving up attachment. You become your own person. The Buddha's deal is everything we are is here already. That sounds a bit positive, I'm not trying to sound. It's there. Not to be, whereas we think happiness comes when I get that thing and put it in here. But it's here already, he says. And then the irony of attachment is it's a junkie. And as my mother used to say, so I was attached to my food, the more you get, the more you want. That's the terrible suffering of attachment. It's a bottomless pit. And we can see that in relationships. Look at your mummy, who's really possessive of you, really attached to you. Look how miserable. She's living in hell every day. You don't love me. You never come to see me. She manipulates you. She's angry with you. She's digging things at you. She's like living in hell. That's because of her attachment. And if you could live in her bed and drink her and feed her your blood every day, she'll still never be satisfied. It's like a junkie. You understand my point? Attachment is a bottomless pit. Are we communicating? So jealousy is actually a response to then attachment doesn't get what it wants, then aversion arises, anger, and then jealousy is actually based in anger. How dare he do that? And how dare she take mine? It's based on attachment, but it's also based on anger, you know?
No, but what I mean is like, for example, if you like compare yourself and be like, okay, this person is smarter, this person.
Well, that kind of jealousy, not the boyfriend. Okay, that's just another way of jealousy, or kind of, it's sort of like, yeah, that's really, one of the things we do now is, that's more to do with arrogance and low self-esteem. Also one of the manifestations of attachment is that we either we become really arrogant and think I'm the best person in the world, as I'm the best at the maths or the most beautiful, then naturally attachment, the arrogance over-exaggerates your beauty, and then you walk around the world thinking I'm more beautiful, and you're always nervous that somebody else might be more beautiful, isn't it? So when someone comes along who's more beautiful, you freak out. That's more like how dare they, you know? But low self-esteem is the flip side. You see everybody else, oh, they're better than me, I'm hopeless. Well, you know, the logic is somebody else being pretty has zero to do with me, but the irony of ego and attachment always comparing. So an arrogant person is always thinking, oh, I hope nobody's better than me. And a low self-esteem always thinks everybody's better than me. And we need to stab ourselves, oh, I'm a disaster, you know. Then again, the more we know our own mind, the more we become who we are and are content with that. Then you can be delighted in someone else who's more beautiful. You can rejoice in them. You don't take it personally. Ego is very personal, you know. It's very fragile.
But how do I work on that?
You simply say, you practice thinking, wow, she's got the most gorgeous ears in the world. They're definitely better than my ears, and I'm happy for her. Instead of, it's not fair, why aren't my ears nice? Really, you simply do the opposite. It's very powerful. It's hard, but it's like an atomic bomb on that thought. Use the opposite. You delight for a person. Like if you feel yourself kind of jealous or upset because your girlfriend tells you, you force it up and you say, I'm really happy for you. That's wonderful. It's immediate. And slowly it becomes truthful for you. Then you can relax and really rejoice, and really be happy, you know? Do you understand? It's a very powerful antidote. That's one. Yes. Someone else.
Hi.
Hello.
I would like to know your view on intuition.
What it is?
Yes.
Well, you know, if we think about these negative neurotic states of mind, and we have the positive ones, are you listening? Yes. We have the negative ones, we have the positive. For us, they're mixed together like a big soup, and we just think they're all normal. But if we take this distinction, they're completely different. And we can sort of see it. If you look at some people who are really self-centered, really angry, really neurotic, really depressed, really suffering, I'm not criticizing, then they've got zero intuition, darling, because the whole world is there to serve their needs, and if it doesn't, they're angry and depressed. They can see nothing in front of them. You could be dying and they wouldn't notice. They just see the inconvenience of you dying in front of them. That's when the mind is overwhelmed by delusions. We get that. But as you lessen that and become more virtuous, that's got a character of connectedness to others. And that we're not less deluded means you're more aware of others. So a person who's self-centered sees another person crying. Like if you're on a plane and a baby's crying, right? It's really hard to not get annoyed, isn't it? But if a person is really intuitive and doesn't get angry, they'd have compassion for that baby because clearly they're suffering. So it means it's a function of being virtuous. It's a function of being in touch with your empathetic states of mind. And indeed, the Buddhist view would say we've got much subtler levels of consciousness, and the whole concept of clairvoyance in Buddhism is completely natural. As we progress and lessen delusions and get more and more concentration in this technique called concentration meditation, and I really mean real subtle, you literally have clairvoyance. It's not some hippie-chippy thing. You literally can not just have a feeling for what someone's thinking, but you know what they're thinking, and that really develops hugely. That's gradual, you know. So that's a tendency we all have. But the more delusion, the less of it. The more virtue, the more connected we are to others.
So you would say that through meditation and concentration, you'll be able to listen your intuition more and more.
Okay, you're asking something slightly different now. I realise your point. I see what you're saying. You mean just something intuitively you feel is right? Well, that's not what I'm talking about, okay? I'm talking about being aware of others. Sorry. That's one point. Okay, that other one. It's not so trustworthy. Let me explain that. I know I understand. Thank you. That's very good. You could argue that a person is very deluded, very self-centered, very neurotic. Then their view of what's right, it's like intuitive. Of course they steal. They feel really good when they steal. We're not going to argue with it. You can say that they intuitively think stealing is right. But clearly they're ridiculous. So intuition, thinking something's right, it could be valid, but don't trust it necessarily. Like I mentioned I think the last time, I remember reading this 19-year-old American boy when he read Hitler. Oh, I'd come home. Everything he said was so real. I found my truth. He literally talked like that. So intuitively, you would say, he was really connected to white supremacism. Hitler spoke his truth. That would be very nice feeling for him. Do not trust that man. In other words, the stronger a certain habit is, the more it's going to feel right. So if you've got virtue, then that's good intuition. So the way to get good intuition is practice virtue until it becomes spontaneous. Then you'll have real wisdom and you'll know what is right. It won't be just cross your fingers. Do you get my point?
Yes,
thank you. What about people? 10 minutes left. Yes.
So, what if the alcoholic brother has children and you witness abuse being done to them? How do you...
So they're your children or someone else's?
No, the alcoholic brother has children.
Oh, okay, good. Thank you, good, good.
Yes.
It's a really reasonable question. But you know, the answer is so practical. Let's say the alcoholic, so does this alcoholic brother have a wife? Okay then straight away, if there's a person in there in his life, but maybe she's even colluding in this, maybe she's also alcoholic. It depends on the situation. Because in the end, you can only do what power you have to do. You can't walk into the next door neighbour's house because the husband is alcoholic and steal the children. You'll get arrested. So you've got to know what your power is, what your authority is, and what rights you have. I mean, that's sometimes even, if there is a wife involved, let's say, when you see the kids being tortured, maybe you can call the police or the social services, I don't know, it depends on the country. But sometimes you just can't do anything. That's the tragedy. Sometimes we don't have the power to do anything. It's just not our right. It's not our role to do it. And we run around trying to steal children because they're suffering. We're going to get into trouble. So you've got to, you know, it's difficult. So your heart might break when you see what's happening. But maybe you can't do much, darling. That's a question of if, let's say his wife agrees with you, then of course, yes, take the kids out of the way. Sometimes we can't do much because it's just not our right to do it. You understand? Maybe you've got to be brave sometimes if you really know this man is raping his children, but no one else knows. Then if you really, I don't know, maybe it's possible to steal the kids and take them away. It's very hard. Do you get my point here? And each situation is quite different. If the alcoholic brother trusts you, that's different. There's so many situations you can have. And this is the real point I'm making. There's so much suffering on this earth. People are doing terrible things to each other, and often our hands are tied.
Yeah, it's difficult because sometimes the wrongdoers need compassion.
Well, that's also the point. See, this is what this is what in Buddhism is. We really get less and less deluded ourselves, and then more and more compassion. Because let's say a Buddhist, in my case, has the view of karma, then you even almost have more compassion for the alcoholic brother, because he's the one not only harming others, but he's harming himself. You know? This is I'll tell you this story. This is a typical Buddhist one, you know. In 2003. When I was running this prison project in America, I was based there 20 years. And Richard Gere, we had a conversation, he wanted to do some work with prisoners. So he invited the Dalai Lama to come to New York to give a talk. He also decided to invite 20 former prisoners, all of whom had done some kind of meditation in prison. So some of my friends in prison were invited, and people like me were invited who work with people in prison. So it was a very wonderful day. All these Americans, like black, white, male, female, Puerto Rican, Mexican, a whole cross-section of Americans, you know. And it was a very moving day, talking about their suffering, how they dealt with prison, all this stuff. And so they met the Dalai Lama. It was a very nice day. So that he also invited, Richard Gere, he also invited 2 young Tibetan nuns, little young 20-year-olds who'd been Buddhist nuns since they're little in Tibet, you know, before the communists came along and, you know, destroyed their country. I think there were 6 million Tibetans, and I think 1/6 of the population were in monasteries, monks and nuns. 99% were Buddhists. Now, I think there were a few Muslims, but I think even the Catholics in the Middle Ages, the Catholics even went to Tibet, they translated the Bible into Tibetan, they didn't get one Tibetan. They couldn't get one to be Christian, you know, very funny. But they got a few Muslims in Lhasa, in the main city. But 99% Buddhists, that's just how they are. And masses of Buddhist monks and nuns. So then in 1950 the Chinese came in, and then 59 there was an uprising. The Dalai Lama and hundreds of thousands of Tibetans escaped to India. So anyway, still, you know, they're imprisoning people, there's torture, they're completely controlling the country, it's very depressing, okay? So these young women, they had been imprisoned for a couple of years. They'd been nuns since they were 2 girls. In other words, they were familiar with the Buddhist teachings, they study it, they practice it. This is their worldview. Everything I'm saying here is their worldview, okay? So there they were in prison, and they were talking about how they had been tortured and sexually abused, okay, for the couple of years they were in prison. So it was, first of all, it was interesting, you know, this interesting first point, that everybody could see, if you wanted to quantify suffering, you could argue that their suffering was worse than most of the people in that room. And the other one was, which I think was very evident to the Americans, who, like all of us, have this view that, you know, your mother made you, that bad things happen, you don't know why bad things happen, so you get angry. It's natural, you know? So basically, these young women weren't angry. And that, we find that very surprising. We just think, we don't trust him almost. You know, they weren't angry. So that would be because they had the view of karma, and I'll explain. So then at the end, one of them, they were sad, you know, tears, and one of them said, at the end, she said, and of course, we had compassion for our torturers, because we knew we must have harmed them in the past, and because they will suffer even worse in the future. Now this sounds intense to us, you know, but this, in other words, the Buddhist view. First of all, working on your own mind, taking on board the view of karma, working on your mind, working on your body, stop creating more rubbish because you don't want suffering, and that becomes very genuine, like compassion for yourself, like self-respect. Then you start to have compassion for everybody else. We are all in the same boat. Life after life after life, meeting each other, harming, being harmed, harming, being harmed. This is the view, you know, and this was just natural for them. They didn't force it, it wasn't sort of artificial. This is their view, this is the way they live their lives. So it's quite interesting, quite moving. So that example is pretty intense, you know, isn't it? Isn't it? Yes, sir.
I want to come back to the intuition question.
Yes, please, good.
So my question is, how do you practice that with intuition, and how can you tell if you reach it?
Okay.
How do you know if this is bad?
See, this is where I think the Buddhist view is most unusual, because Buddhist psychology is very intricate, very detailed, very precise, and the Buddha says that we have got the power to go internally, using this model, getting concentration, and using this as a basis for looking into your own mind. So you start looking into your own mind and start having ideas of what's there. If you, okay, let me explain. Okay. People talk about mindfulness meditation. You've heard about it, right? Mm-hmm. So the commonest one is a variation of this concentration. So you learn to be mindful. A part of that is learning to see what's happening as you're going along. You become more aware. Okay? Now that's good. But think of it like this. Let's say there's a big garden out there, and I'm becoming mindful of the garden. I look every day, I see it all, I can see it clearly, I'm really aware of what's there. That's mindfulness, right? Now, but if I don't know botany, if I don't know how to interpret what I'm being mindful of, Are you hearing me? If I can't distinguish a weed from a herb, from a cauliflower, from an oak tree, what is the point of mindfulness? It's like becoming an idiot. Oh, I'm mindful of the garden. So what? So here, what I'm saying, get to my point, you've got to be mindful, concentrate, and you're looking inside, which is the garden in here. So right now it's chaos. We recognise an angry feeling, we recognise a jealous feeling, but that's the tip of the iceberg. Buddha says we've got to go way more deep to unpack and unravel beyond the emotions, to get to ever more subtle levels of seeing the elaborate conceptual stories that are flooding our mind. But it's like an uncontrolled garden. The weeds, the herbs, the flowers are completely mixed together. So we've got to get much more deep. So then we need a model of the mind, like we need botany, a basis for interpreting what we're seeing, so we can do the unpacking and unraveling and pull out the weeds and grow the flowers. So here we're using Buddha's model of the mind, not Jung, not Freud, not another Western model. That's our decision. I've decided to use Buddha's. Do you understand my point? So we've got to see it, I just look and it all reveal itself. Oh, I see my mind. It's absurd. You don't just look at the garden and suddenly the herb says, I'm a herb, I'm a cauliflower. No, you've got to learn, you've got to imbue your mindfulness with intelligence to know how to interpret what you're seeing. Then you can be a really good gardener. Then you know what to do with what is in there. That's the big answer to your question. Buddha says we have this ability to have phenomenal, crystal clear wisdom that is undiluted, unneurotic, unpolluted. That's exactly what he said we can develop, to degrees of incredible wisdom that I think we don't even posit. Because I think we just think everything in here is kind of subjective and you can't trust it. That's not the Buddha's view at all. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. Yes, darling.
Is there a difference between being passionate about something and being attached to something?
Oh, massively, hugely, so completely profoundly and utterly differently. Like, as you say in English, they're like chalk and cheese. Go on.
We might say, I like food or I like clothes and I'm passionate about it.
Oh, passion, not compassion. Oh, beg your pardon. Oh, beg your pardon. Beg your pardon. I misheard you. Okay. Well, it depends, you know. Sweetie, if you're a junkie, you've got passion for heroin. If you're a multi-murderer, I'm not being sarcastic, trying to be my point, then you've got a passion for killing. If you're a fisherman, you've got passion for killing fish. You think about it all the time, you define yourself as a fisherman. I mean, that's what, if you say, but I know the way we use that word is in a good way, so I know your point. So if you've got a passion for things that are, if it's not just a passion for food or things that make you, it's not just attachment, then if it's only attachment, it's a disaster for you and it won't help. But if it's a passion for things based to make yourself happy and nice, that you want to be useful to others and use this to help others, and then it's beneficial, darling. I mean, listen to me, don't I sound passionate? I'm not the view of, apparently tell me I'm not like a normal view of Buddhist nut. Quiet, slow. So you can say I'm very passionate about what I'm doing. I'm enthusiasm. It's called enthusiasm. Well, I try to practice what I'm saying. So I have enthusiasm. So you can say that. So if it's virtuous and useful and beneficial and wise, baby, go for it. You see my point? You see my point?
Yes.
If it's just delusion, if it's just passion for money and passion for, then it's a nightmare. You become utterly self-centered and you harm others and you lie, steal and cheat. And you go and you become like a nightmare. You'll never get happy. So the thing is, this mistakes about this idea of mindfulness, or the idea even about Buddhism, that sort of you're giving up happiness, you're giving up compassion, you're giving up liking everything, you become this depressed person. I mean, if Buddhism is about that, thanks a lot, mate. I don't know. It sounds boring, It's not like that at all. You understand? Yes? I think, how strict is the pros and cons?
Two questions.
Yes, okay.
Do you think the mind can heal physical illness?
Physical illness, yes. Well, put it this way. The Buddhist view that this is, the Buddhist esoteric teachings, Buddhist Tantra, they call it Buddhist Vajrayana teachings. And the Tibetan medical system is based on that same, it's coming from the Hindus, this very subtle description of the inner physical energies. It's quite different from the allopathic system. So, you know, if you go to your Tibetan doctor, okay, first of all, again, Buddhist view, if you do negative actions, that pollutes your own physical energies now, and then it programs your mind with negative seeds, and then it ripens in the future. That one of the ways that killing can manifest in the future is you have sickness, for example. So it's very subtle, because it goes from life to life. So then, if you go to your Tibetan doctor and she feels your pulses, she'll be able to distinguish even the karma you created, if she's a really good doctor, which is the cause of that, and then she can see that this energy is related to anger, this one's related to other states of mind. So by giving you herbal medicine, they use herbal medicines, that fixes the subtler physical energies, which can then help you heal. But also, the second one is by working on your mind, less angry, less jealous, less neurotic, that also can help absolutely purify your physical energy. There's no question. But serious illnesses, of course you can sometimes do that by good eating and meditation, that's true. But if it's very serious, you can't fix it in this life. I mean, you certainly can, because there's an intimate relationship between the mind and the body.
I'm asking this especially in relation to some Christian beliefs that touching saints or healing from an exterior source is based, in my opinion, on interior beliefs and interior autosuggestion. But is it the same view in the Buddhist philosophy?
I understand. The Buddhist view would be that as you progress, let's say, work on your mind, purifying your mind, then inevitably you also purify your subtler physical entities. So that for sure, if you, even just to be a good massage therapist, that's called healing. I think if you're a really deluded and negative person and you put your hand on somebody, I don't think you're going to heal them. It's not mysterious, it's not logical. Whereas, you know, okay, in Tibet, the Tibetan Buddhist one, as you become more and more holy person, more and more profound, more and more virtuous, literally even your body is holy. So that in a sense, the Buddhism would agree with, so for example, speech. That's connected to certain wind energies. You know, if there's no air, there's no speech. So even by practicing being silent, by practicing not using negative words, as you progress on your mind, you become a very powerful person. So in Tibet, they even use their speech and their breath to heal. So in a sense, they try to explain it logically. Because if you're a very powerful being, your body's powerful, your mind is powerful. You can benefit others. They would say that.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. I think you should finish. One more person here. Oh, one more person there.
There was another question, I think.
Okay. Yes.
I want to ask you, in this life, we have to purify the karma only on this present life?
No, it's a bit like gardening. If you look at your garden now and you see that oak tree and those rose bushes, and you know they've been there for quite a while. They just didn't manifest in the last week. They could have been there for 20 years. You believe that? So they're the fruit of seeds you planted a long time ago. So almost by definition, the Buddha's view is that you come into this life in the first second of conception programmed with all the seeds you planted before, and what ripens in this life is mostly from past life. What you do now, though, you can affect it, of course you can. So you can prune that rose bush. So what you do now can help the rose bush, but the rose bush has been there for quite a while. So you can. Okay, in general, the practice in Buddhism at the first level, you stop creating more negative karma as much as you can. And we have various practices that we call purification, where you start to clean up your act and try to purify the seeds you planted in the past before they ripen as more suffering. And then you attempt to create not more now. You don't just clean up now, you can clean up way past as well. A bit like in a garden. Anyway, that's what I'm saying. Two questions up here that we want to finish, I think. Up here, up the front. Oh, that's three. Okay, three. So they're going to throw us out at 8:30? Do they throw us out at 8:30? Well, they haven't yet.
I think it was 9.
Okay, we're nearly finished. Okay, Margaret?
We got here until 9. So there is no
well, we don't need to be until 9. Go on, talking. Yes, darling.
I want to ask about that extra
different life, just like
Reincarnation.
said.
Yes.
And if, let's say I was a very, very bad person in a different life, and now can I be happy? Can I do enough actions to be happy in this life?
Okay, just a general idea, okay? We think of this, so we're this person at this moment. Well, so is a dog, so is a monkey. We've all got a consciousness that goes back and back and back and back. We have trillions and trillions, if you like, of seeds in our mind. But in this life, just a few right now. So what I would say, we've done so many good things in the past. We've also done so many bad things. So the idea is, we're carrying all these with us, but they're not necessarily growing now, they're not manifesting. So the job is to stop creating more negative karma and then to purify the past karma before it ripens. That's the general approach to practice. So therefore, on the basis of that, if you've got a human birth, which we have, you've got intelligence, we're sitting in this room, it's not cooking class, it's not gun club, we're talking here spiritual things. Every one of you obviously is thinking about something like this. It doesn't mean you become Buddhists, you don't have to, but we're thinking, so that's pretty amazing to be on this earth, to even want to understand ourselves, to even want to understand how to become a better person. That's pretty incredible. That's from being very virtuous in the past. So you use that to make the most of this life, to not do negative, do positive, and purify the rubbish that we did before it ripens as suffering. You kind of get ahead of the game, That's the general approach, roughly speaking. What's it? Now, you two. Oh, what's your question? Okay, and then your question? Good, go on.
I wanted to ask you, what's the Buddhist view on the unconscious?
Well, I don't know what you mean by the unconscious, but I'll tell you, they don't use that word in Buddhism, but I've been implying it a few times, so I'll say it again.
I've never fully understood the concept.
I understand that, and I don't know what people mean by it, I don't know. But I think if you look pretty simply, don't you think, okay, the Buddhist explanation of it is, if we come into this life from the first second of conception in your mother's womb, fully programmed with all the tendencies and all the experiences that will play out in this life, and they are from life after life before, and if our lives go back and back, talk about unconscious, honey. And they say in Buddhism, there's not a millisecond of anything we see or hear or touch or have contact with, none of it goes astray. Everything gets stored in our mind. Everything. As one other put it, it's like all day we're shooting a movie, every second, and we store that movie in here, and so we're going from life to life with countless movies that we haven't yet played out. Nothing goes astray. So unconscious in Buddhism is pretty deep. And this concentration technique that these Indians invented 3,000 years ago, which the Buddha takes is the main one, that gets you to get to this incredibly subtle level of your mind, then you can do the real work of unpacking and unraveling the unconscious, which is essentially what we have to do. There's levels of mind that we can learn to control and understand, and that isn't, again, that's not how we think about culture. It's kind of mysterious to us, Do you understand? Yes, one more.
Thank you. In regards to karma.
What about it? Karma.
Yes. You gave examples of good and bad, like the dying mouse and how one thought of helping him. Right?
Yes.
But what about the more subtle actions that we have? Because good and bad is subjective.
No, not for Buddha. It's not subjective.
Yeah,
not for Buddha.
If I can give you an example of charity, yes? For me, charity is a weapon of mass destruction because it keeps people thinking that they've done their
Okay, listen. Okay, so stop right there. Charity itself. You said charity.
It's not compassion.
Did you say charity? Giving, generosity. Okay, good. Stop. Your perfect example is what I said before. Giving in general, we can establish as a fact, as a natural law. First of all, in general, a virtuous action is one that benefits another. So you're arguing. So we could argue the generosity is. But this way, wait. I get your point. I understand your point. But the motivation there is deluded. And then at the end, there's no wisdom There's no wisdom at all. It's just a feel-good thing. Or we give our money and make, but in the end, it's not beneficial. So therefore, it's not the generosity in general, you could say. But if it hasn't got wisdom and it's not motivated by the right motivation, then it does harm.
Yes.
It absolutely
so how
does.
does that affect your karma?
Every single thing we do and say and think is the process of creating karma. So we've got to start establish at least first, simple level. Back off and don't harm. Play safe. We have no wisdom. Don't even try to help yet, because we've got zero wisdom. At least don't harm. But as you then go to the next level, you start to develop your mind, you get infinite more wisdom, more clarity, even extraordinary clarity. Then you can inform your compassionate actions with wisdom. But that's highly developed in Buddhism. I mean, Buddha says we can develop it to a really enormous degree. So we play safe and don't just leap in and be a nice person just for your own sake. There's no. I agree with your point. It's such a good point, but it's quite intricate. But the Buddha would always say it's reasonable and doable and logical. It's incremental, one step at a time. That's the whole point. To have perfect compassion means to have perfect wisdom, so that you have the confidence that everything you do will benefit, no matter how long it takes. And that can include like tough love. If you're my mummy and I keep eating too much chocolate and you told me 4 times no more chocolate, you say no more chocolate, go to your room. I'll think you're being mean. But that's wise compassion. But I don't know that, but that's because you've got wisdom. So that includes tough love, you know. But it's wisdom based on what's genuinely best for that person. To have wisdom is pretty intense. We have very little wisdom. I'll tell you an intense story. We'll finish the story. Finish. This is a long-term example of this type of wisdom that Buddhism says we can accomplish. So my teacher, Robina Courtin, his monastery is in Kathmandu. And one of my friends, Harry, an American, who's a student also of this Lama, there was one monk there, it was all these Nepalese, the Sherpa monks, and one of the monks was very sick, and he found a doctor to help him, okay? So he happened to tell Lama, yes, he found the doctor. And Lama just said to Harry, don't do anything. It's okay. Leave it alone. So Harry trusted Lama, and he didn't do anything. The monk got more sick, then went up to the mountains, and he died. Now that, on the face of it, sounds like really cruel. Wouldn't you agree? He just didn't help the monk. But Lama, the abbot of the monastery told Harry, you know, and this is the thing that they talk about all the time in Tibetan Buddhism, that we've all got this capability, and he's one of those people, that he had clairvoyance. And we're talking here really crystal clear, seeing the past, seeing the future, seeing the karma of people. More and more you progress, more powerful you become, more wise, and therefore more compassionate. So Lama could see the karma this monk created, whatever life it was, that is the cause of this suffering. So if he got better, he would have been fine, had a nice life, but he wouldn't have finished that heavy karma, and his next life would have been so terrible. So better for him to be sick. He died very well, and he had karma finished. Next life, fantastic. Now, who has that level of wisdom? We do not. So all we can do is use the wisdom we've got. But it's incremental, one step at a time.
Thank you.
You understand? Actually, many times Buddha says you can't really begin to benefit others until we have clairvoyance. It's a natural thing in Buddhism. It's come from the Hindus. It's something completely acceptable and doable, manageable. You understand? So it's very important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, let's finish. So again, I'm going to finish with a little prayer. I'll say a prayer. I'm just saying a prayer in the beginning. I need to do. I'll sing one now. I'll sing 2 prayers. And very often, prayers in Buddhism. Before I finish, I should do an advertisement for these people. Marius and this group, they really want to start. I've been in Bucharest, and some people invited me, and they're serious now about starting a really serious Tibetan Buddhist centre, you know, and they're full on organising it. They want to do it very soon, so they can bring their teachings, as people seem to want. And the same here, Marius has really been doing this for quite a few years. He's got this little group, and now he really wants to start something more serious, set up a proper place where we can teach meditation and do different Buddhist classes. So kind of keep your eyes open. Hasn't got a name yet, but he wants to do what we're talking about. That's great, I'm happy. So anyway, that's the advertisement. So now it's like this. The first one is, we call it the dedication. And what it's really saying is, here we've been a couple of hours, or even some of us longer. As many thoughts we've had, as many moments as there have been, is as many seeds we've planted. They won't go astray. So we think, marvellous, how may we nourish these seeds without effort, our practice, whatever we develop to do, to become a better person, for our sake and for the sake of others. And to have great confidence, I think. Please have confidence in our own potential. And then second, the little prayer is just expressing the wish, the compassion, grow and grow in the hearts of all.
Thank you.
Thank you.